Here we go. So I want to do a little bit of classroom etiquette just to make sure that we're on the same page. First of all, you will see a plethora of clutter behind me. We're moving in 2 weeks, so we have boxes and stuff everywhere, it feels like. So just to make sure that we all kind of know what's expected on these calls, I want you to, when you're coming to these calls, to treat it as if you're going to the classroom setting. If COVID wasn't here, we would be sitting in a classroom right now, 12 of us there, or 10 of us this round, in the classroom for 4 hours. I know it's a lot more comfortable because we're home, but one thing that I do ask is that you treat this as a classroom. If you were in a classroom and you were talking to your neighbor, I would ask you to leave. You know, I've been teaching for 20 plus years, so, and I've been a student for all my life, it feels like. And so when I am in a classroom setting, I know the amount of work that the instructor has put into the material. I know that it's taken a lot of time and energy and experience to create the material. And I respect that. And I also respect what I'm paying for. You guys are paying for this training. So treat it accordingly and treat it as if you're in class, in the classroom setting. I do not take calls or text during our class unless it's one of you guys, because as soon as I get a message, of course, it pops up who it is. And I only leave my phone here because of that, because sometimes you guys know this, we're on these calls and one of you may have trouble getting in. And so at least I'm not counting you absent if you're texting me and I know you're trying to get in or you're in an area where you don't have reception or different things. So I say all that because in the past, we have had situations that have caused us to have to create some kind of stronger etiquette. And what that looks like is if you are choosing to not be present, then I will choose to allow you to do that, which means I will remove you from the room. And once I remove you from the room, you're not able to get back in. And so then you're missing the rest of the material. I am going to start recording these moving forward so that if you miss a lecture, you're still counted absent, but I can give you access to that lecture so you have the material. It doesn't erase your absence, but it allows you to get that lecture. So that is a benefit. If you are removed from the class, you will not be given access to that. You've lost out. Ways that you can get removed is if I can clearly see that you are not engaged, meaning because we do a lot of interaction in these classes, so I want you to be engaged with me and with your classmates. We'll do breakout sessions. It's only 4 hours. I have classes once a month. It's 8-hour days to Saturday and Sunday. That's a lot that, you know, if I was with you that long, I wouldn't require your attention, but we're only here 4 hours. I mean, I know that people are in your home because you are in your home. And I know that there's people that may be talking to you and you have to respond, but there is a difference between that and you're present with them and fully engaging in them and not your classroom. So does that all make sense to you guys? Any questions about it? Any disagreements? It is a time for discussion if you want that. Let me, hang on just a minute, I'm kind of taking roll at the same time. Okay. Yolanda, was Tawny with you guys last night?
No, she was out. She told me
Okay.
yesterday and tonight, and she'll be back tomorrow.
Okay. I kind of think that she sent me that, but I've had 9 million emails, so.
My computer was like on vacation itself because it didn't want to turn on.
I understand that. I had that happen yesterday. Okay, so So the expectations that I have from you during this class time is give the material your attention. You have to think of this as this is preparing you for your career. Your profession that you're going into is a stressful career. It is high knowledge gets you a long way. The more you know, the further you'll go. If you halfway pay attention, you're going to be a half surge tech, okay? You're not going to be as optimal as you want to be. And to go far in this profession, and there's a lot of ways to go in this profession, you have to know your stuff. And the surgeons that are depending on you need you to know your stuff. The patients that you're with need you to know your stuff. The stuff in the beginning of the program, and for some of you, it's the end of the program, but in the beginning of the book, to me, is some of the most important material, because it teaches you about your profession. It teaches you about the job that you're doing, the surroundings. And I know a lot of you have had to kind of learn it, backwards. It's really important that you are present and absorb this material well. It's not hard. This first term, or this term we're in, which is the first section of the book, to me is probably the easiest. The medical terminology is even a little bit more challenging than this, in my opinion. And this because we're learning about the standards and the ethics and the material and the procedures and things like that. Then the next term we get into the actual guts and glory of it, which is the actual procedures, and then we do a lot of surgery. So my expectations are for you to be present, to try to refrain from distractions. I know we all, like I said, we have family in the house. It's going to happen, and you just don't let it absorb you. You don't let yourself be fully consumed by what's going on around you. Allow that distraction to happen and then pass on. I have dogs, they bark, I spray them. You guys have kids, they come up and kiss you goodnight and, hug on you. You guys have dogs, we get to see each other's dogs and kids and partners, and that's all great. That's life. We're in our living room, we're in our kitchen, we're in our house. And so there's other people there with us. That's totally understandable. And I want you to know that. I don't want you to be like, get away, I'm on camera, I don't want to get kicked off the class. That's not the case. But if you're riding down the highway on a motorcycle on class, guess what? Kicking you off. So, there's limits to how far my patients can go. So, and those of you that have been with me a while, we saw that happen, and we saw somebody get removed from the class. So Yolanda, I think you're the only one that remembers that. So
I laugh because it's like when you see the warning on the dryer where it's like, do not put, I saw a warning once on a dryer that says something like, do not put firecrackers. And I was like, you only put that because someone actually tried that. So you only say that because someone actually was on Zoom on a freaking motorcycle.
We get on this class and I'm like, what in the world? And this person is on a motorcycle in class. And I had just that day sent an email out saying, I was basically fed up with being present with everybody in the house but us, and I booted them off. And then my phone was blowing up. I can't get back in the class. I'm like, yeah, you're right. Did you see the email? You're out. So anyway, just know that I want you to be present with the material. It's not that I want it to be your attention to be on me. I want your attention to be on the material and to really be absorbing. I want you to, once you have your book available, be following along, and we're going to talk a lot about the book and all that. And we'll slide right into that now. So that's all the etiquette part that I have. The expectations that I have of you are be present, fully commit to the program and to the training. As far as the evening, we've got 4 hours. It depends on the material. I'll tell you, the first chapter, there's not 4 hours of material in this chapter. We have a lot to cover besides the chapter material though. And we have those lovely lab videos that we get to watch every term, just because you want as much exposure as you can. I don't take a lot of breaks unless my bladder makes me. I almost said bowel. Wow, okay, that too. Hey, I'm a doctor. We talk about poop and pee all the time. So if you're uncomfortable with that, you better get over it now, because you're in the medical field and you're going to hear a lot about it. So what I usually do is, if we have to take a quick potty break for, in the break time, we'll do that really quickly. But what I'll ask you to do is, if your body tells you you need a little break, take the break. You don't have to hold it till we break. Just get up and go and come back. And if I have to go, I'm going to pause this for 5 minutes and I'm going to go and come back. But that saves us taking a long break and having to go all the 4 hours. So the 4 hours counts in about a 20-minute break in the middle. I don't need a 20-minute break. I've already had dinner. I've already walked the dogs. I don't need 20 minutes. If you guys do, spread them out. Go take you a 5-minute break here and there. Just know you're missing the material. That's on you. Because if we were in the classroom, you would leave and go to the restroom when you needed to, right? Same thing here. That's what you're going to do. You don't have to wait till we break, because we're not going to break. Like I said, unless there's a Dolores emergency, and then we will. So just know that. And what that allows us to do is usually get off of here around 9:30 or so, because we're cutting that break off. And that way we're not on here till 10 o'clock. You're not having to wait till 10:30 or so to get in bed, because I like a regular sleep cycle like you guys do. Any questions on anything I've covered so far? Okay. Now what I'd like to do is go around the room, so to speak, and because I don't know, as we've, I think we did do this last term with you guys. I want you guys to just talk a little bit about, one, who you are, kind of where you're at in life, me, and I'll start and show you what I mean, where you are in life. And then 3, what brought you here, or why you're doing this, right? Okay. I'm Dr. Dolores Stevens. I'm a naturopathic physician in Washington and Oregon. I had a thriving practice in Portland, Oregon for many years. I closed it in 2019, however many years ago that is, to go to Alabama and take care of my dad. He had Alzheimer's. He was end-stage Alzheimer's, having a hip replacement. We closed the practice, bought an RV, traveled, went down there and stayed. We've traveled around for a while, and then we settled here for a little bit. We're leaving in 2 weeks to move to Asheville, North Carolina. My wife is a naturopathic doctor and an acupuncturist, and so we're going there for an additional Chinese medicine program there. We have 5 kids, 4 grandkids, and 3 French bulldogs. So life is a little crazy in our world, and they get nuts, and they come up and climb up, and sometimes I have to get them up, so you'll see them. And I named them before I moved to Spokane, but I have Thor and Freya and Elia. I did not name them after these city streets. When we moved here, we were like, what? This place is named after our dogs. It's meant to be. I've been teaching for 20 years, 20 plus years. I started teaching in 2000. I've taught on college level, university levels at a lot of places. I also now currently teach at an acupuncture school in Austin, Texas. When we moved here, we were working with a realtor to set up a clinic, and then COVID hit in like 2 weeks. So we weren't able to set up a clinic here. So it kind of worked out well though, so that we could move on and do other things. So I see patients online, and I work at a medical marijuana place here. What brought me to this job? My wife works with Eric, who is the owner of the school. And we went to look at the school to see about opening a clinic in some of the areas, which now looking at the school, I'm like, how in the world, where would we have put it? But his surgical tech professor had just turned in their notice, and then school was starting in like 2 weeks. And I'd been teaching for years, and I'm like, I can help you out because COVID was here. I couldn't work, and so that's how I ended up doing this. I took over the program. We've revamped the program completely. We brought in 3 new lab instructors. Now I'm a doctor, and I don't do surgery. I do minor surgeries, and I worked in surgery years ago. So, but I had never paid attention to the scrubs other than what they were doing. I didn't pay attention to their setup. I didn't pay attention to their technique, nothing. So when I fell into this role, I had to learn what you guys do. So you think you study, I study way more than you study for your job. So because you don't know anything until you try to teach it, then you have to learn it better than the people you're teaching it to. So I've studied a lot of surgery, and then I realized I should have been a surgeon. And you guys are going to get into that mode too. You're going to go into surgery and you're going to be like, shoot, I should be over there on that side of the table, because you're going to know, you're going to feel like you know as much as that surgeon, and you will to a degree. So that's me. That's what brought me here. And if you guys just want to randomly go, feel free. And if not, I'll call you. If you have questions about me, ask, I'll tell you. All right, nobody's going. I'm gonna go see, you guys are in like this thing on my screen. I'm just gonna call you off one. Jacqueline,
I'll go.
Becky going.
I'll go. I'm Becky. I have 6 kids, 2 dogs, and 12 chickens. I have been a lunch lady manager for 18 years, and I'm at the age where all my kids are grown almost, and I have to pick what I want to be for a living. And it's either stay where I'm at, which I love my job as the lunch lady. It was great. I love it. It's been good. But do I want to do that from now until I'm 67 years old or 70? So I'm at that age where I have to turn. So I've always wanted to be, I have my mental health degree. That wasn't for me. I've worked as a CNA. I love the medical field, so I think this one will be work for me. I hope. If not, I'm going back to being a lunch lady.
Awesome. Thank you. Go, Yolanda.
Okay. I'm Yolanda. I have been in this program. I started it in December. This is my last term. And I moved to Spokane from California a couple years ago. Just new beginnings. Same as Becky, my kids are older. And it's kind of like a new start. And I worked for 15 years as a 911 dispatcher, and I absolutely loved it. It was a great career, and I kind of, it is isolating in some ways. It's like you just kind of miss working with people. It's kind of like a weird thing. It's very fulfilling, but it was also, you just kind of miss being around people. And so, I thought about nursing and all the various avenues of, the medical field that you can work. And I came across this program, and it like really struck my fancy. I love like niche things. I love learning one thing and becoming really good at it, which is kind of what appeals to me. So yeah, I'm really excited about it. I think same as Becky, it's just a new start, and it's like the next chapter of my life. And I love anatomy. I love science. And I had one class with the previous teaching staff, and the education, and like one thing I can offer, like everything that Dolores teaches us, it's like to me such a gift, because she's so incredibly like knowledgeable about like, the human body and all these different things. So I just like really eat it up, like I realize we're really, really lucky to get this, knowledge that you give us. So I'm very excited about it.
Awesome. Thank you, Yolanda.
And I have 4 kids and 3 dogs.
There, I was about to say, wait a minute, what about the dogs?
I know.
Thanks, Rachel. Good deal. Thanks, Rachel. I was about to text you. So Rachel's in a place where there's like a ton of background noise, so she's going to introduce herself next week. I was about to text you and ask you that. Tyler. You guys are not going, I'm just going to call on you.
That's fine. I'm Tyler. I am currently in MHT at Inland Northwest Behavioral. I only have one dog, no kids. So since we're throwing that out there. What got me into wanting to become a surgical tech was just actually my mom. She did the phlebotomy class through Horizon, and she told me about these different programs that they had. And working as a CNA, like the past 6 years, 7 years of my life, I needed something more and something more fulfilling. And it was just, I didn't want to also go back to school for like 4 years. So when I came across this, I was like, this is perfect. And yeah, that's about it for me though.
Good deal. Good deal. Awesome. Thank you. Darby?
So my name is Darby. I'm currently a flight attendant. I have one dog. I kind of lost my job during COVID, and Tyler talked to me about getting into this program. So he's actually the reason why I started doing it. And the more I'm getting into it, I'm actually starting to enjoy it quite a bit.
Good deal. And I'll tell you guys, when we did this last term, when they started, I'm like, Darby, what got you in this? She said, Tyler made me do it. So we're glad that he did. Okay, Jacqueline.
My name's Jacqueline. I have one dog. He's a black lab. I've been a medical assistant, certified medical assistant for almost 3 years now. And that's a little too boring for me, too much office work. So I wanted to better myself, and now I'm in this program and I'm really excited about it. So that's me.
Very, very cool. All right, Michaela.
I'm a native to Spokane. I have no kids, but I take care of my 2 nieces. I have 2 Rotties, and I work at Westside Motorsports as reception, but I'm getting transferred to sales. And I've always been interested in the medical field, and I worked at Sacred Heart for 5 years, but I knew that I wanted like an actual career. I was going to go for the phlebotomy class as well, but then once I found Surg Tech, I knew that that's where I wanted to be. So
Cool.
I also looked into God, I always forget the name, like what you get whenever you're pregnant. Starts with a U. Anyway, I looked into that as a tech too.
Ultrasound.
Ultrasound, thank you. I was gonna go for that one, but yeah, I liked this one better. So
This,
right?
yeah, good. This one's a lot more exciting than ultrasound, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Well, good. We're glad to have you.
Thank you.
John?
You guys hear me?
Yes.
So my name's John. I'm born and raised in Spokane. I have 2 kids. One's 1.5. Her name's Nora. The other one is 2.5. His name is Wyatt. I was a CNA for 7 years. And then after that, I kind of fell into a job, and it was aseptic process technician at Jubilant Hollister Steer. And that is a pharmaceutical manufacturer. So that's what I'm currently doing. It pays really well. Wanted to look into things coming back into like a medical setting, and just to have something as like a backup, and yeah, maybe change career paths one day.
Very cool. Nice to have you both. Now, Michaela, do you have any medical background at all or training?
No.
Okay.
I was
okay.
a dietitian assistant.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. It's just good to know. I like to kind of know like where we are, so it helps me know when I need to explain something in more detail.
I know a little bit. I did like transcription work for like a year, like a couple of years ago. So I know a little bit, and just working at Sacred Heart, you catch a lot of things. but nothing that I've like studied myself.
Sure. Okay, good deal. All right, thank you. Nice to meet everyone and get to know everyone a little bit more. You know, just the more you guys tell about yourselves, the more that we mesh a little bit. One thing that I wanted to talk about before we get into the syllabus and all of that is, you know, with me moving, it's going to present a little bit of a change for us because I will be 3 hours ahead of you guys. I do not necessarily want to start teaching at 9 o'clock at night, so I'm not. So what I will do, and the reason that we're recording these is moving forward, once I've moved, I will be recording these lectures. I'm still trying to work it out with the text as far as like making sure that they're in the places they want to be with the lab. But the way it looks is that we will meet on here, and I'll announce it before we do it, but we've got at least 2 weeks of being here, or three sessions where we're live. And then in September, and I'll let you know the date, we will meet for an hour and or two, we'll figure that out. We may have to like play it by ear in the beginning, kind of see how long we need, but the actual material will be recorded. So the lecture with the material and all of that will be recorded. We will meet, we will go over homework assignments if we need to, we'll review the exams, we'll answer questions, you know, we'll work together in that time that we have live to make sure that you're feeling completely prepared to move forward with the new material. So you'll have your exams still on Tuesday night, unless you guys want to look at shifting that up. And I'm okay, because this is your program, okay? I'm not a stickler of like, no, it has to be this way. I don't feel that way. If you, with our schedule shifting a little bit in September, we can look at us meeting on the Wednesday night, like we are, reviewing homework, going over any questions you have in the exams, and then moving your exams to Thursday night. So that is definitely an option. Right now, that's not a good option because would be lecturing new material while we're live. But once I've moved and the lecture material is actually online, then we can look at shifting that to Thursday night if you prefer. Then that gives you Friday till the following Wednesday to get through that recording. Does that make sense? And so that way, on our Wednesday night together, you've not just taken your exam, but now we're going over that material. That would kind of be counterintuitive. So if we, at that point, see that would be a good fit, that's what we'll do. And that seems like that would be the best schedule to me. And I love your feedback. So feel free to give me your feedback on those ideas. Any thoughts?
I like that idea.
One thing I mentioned too, I brought my book so that the newer terms can see, you know, the book and the homework book and whatnot. And I did show Deanna, remember how we used to go over the case studies?
Yes.
Which was, it was really helpful because a lot of times the testing questions encompassed those case studies, you know, kind of like in a roundabout way, it fully answered a lot of the questions. So I mentioned to her that maybe like it would be good if we incorporated working on some of the case studies on one of the lab nights.
I like that.
So
what'd she say?
She was like, oh my gosh, that's a great idea. And so she was looking at the book. She wanted to get the same edition that we have. And she said she was going to mention it to you. So.
Okay. And so on the topic of the book, we'll get into detail of that in just a few moments. But I did send you guys all the chapters 1 and 2, but Rachel sent me the life-saving text. It was only the odd pages. So I jumped, and I had not even like looked at the entire thing. I just looked at the first page and I was like, okay, that's that one. And then I just went to the next one. And so I called Eric, and he was gonna run to the school and send me the email of the even pages. Let me check real quick, make sure he hasn't sent that. Because as soon as he does, I will send it to you guys. So he's not sent it yet. So you have the odd pages of the book, and the evens are coming. So you have chapters 1 and 2, and this is of edition, the 5th edition. You'll have the 5th edition coming too. I'm like you, Yolanda. I got the 4th. I got the good old book. The thing is, the hard copy books were going to be pretty much impossible to get in the time frame that we needed them. They were just so far out that it was not even a possibility. And I think too, Eric was worried about us changing over. And I talked him into changing now rather than later, because we might as well get the new edition and get started in it. So we'll get those pages as soon as they come, and then we should have access to the online really soon. They said within this 2 weeks that we have the 2 chapters, we should have our full online access. So as soon as we have that, it'll be sent to you and you'll have access to everything online. Here's the only concern I have with it, and I haven't got to look at the 5th edition enough to know if it's a valid concern for me, is the exams I've already created all the exams and the study guides are all created. So now that we're shifting books, I'm like, now I've got to go back and see if the book is going to correlate enough that these study guides will work. Because if they won't, I'm not sure if you'll have study guides. That's my point. But I'm going to see once I get a really good look at the 5th edition and compare it with the exam and the study guide. I'm hoping that it is close enough, because you guys know, if you've had textbooks before, the 4th to the 5th edition, it's usually just improved images and a few updates. It's not like the core content is drastically different, not usually. So I just want to make sure that all of the key things that they are improving on, that we're covering as well. So if you've opened up your book email that I sent you, you've realized that you just get to read every other page. So I know, right? You get half an education right now. Okay. Any more feedback on the scheduling ideas?
It works for me.
Okay, good deal. Okay, if anyone has anything to add, please add. Silence means yes to me. Okay. Anytime that I hear nothing, I think you're agreeing with me.
A question, are we gonna have any more online modules?
Oh, you mean from last term? I think her signal's cutting out.
Yeah, I sent her a text asking if we had any more online modules for this term or not, or if that was just kind of a one-time thing.
No, that was just the medical terminology course. Once that course is finished, once you took that final exam, you're done. Yeah.
Cool. So it's just homework and tests from here on out.
Yeah, this term, it's just homework. So you have a study guide. It's not mandatory. Homework is mandatory. You're graded on it. It's not mandatory, but you're graded on it. And then you have an exam. So there's no more online. The online modules and all of that online work is just in the term of medical terminology. And John and Michaela, that will be your last term. So
Since you're moving, are we just gonna put our homework in the bin and someone else is gonna, or how do you get the homework?
Yeah, well, that's kind of what we're kind of looking at figuring out right now is like with one way that we can do that is we meet here online and we discuss and grade our homework, like you're grading it yourself. With COVID, we're having to depend a lot on the honor code. You know, that if you miss 3, you tell me you missed 3, and that's what I put down. If you say I got 100, I'm like, I'm not sure you got 100, but I'm going to take your word for it because you're the one's got to sleep with that. Yeah, that's probably the way that we're going to have to do it, where you're not actually physically turning it in anymore, that you're just doing it. Because homework, we count it as a grade just because it kind of helps us with an audit from the state. It helps us prove that you're doing the work that we say you're doing. And so but for us, the homework is simply a way for you to study and to really get familiar with the material. Because you know this, as you do this homework, you're preparing for the exam.
I will add too, like when we were doing honor system with towards the end of the big book,
Yep.
so much of it is material that's in the test that if you don't, you're only cheating yourself.
Exactly. Exactly. I know. And I would see students like they would miss a whole 2 pages of homework material. And I'm thinking, that is like a bulk of the test. And then they'd be like, I failed. And I'm like, you should have done your homework because that was the exam right there. So, and like Yolanda said, the case studies, like anytime you see the case study or extra questions in the test, do them because it's helping you, 1, get really familiar with the material. And 2, there's a lot of times those questions are on the test. I've seen that a lot of times, especially like she was saying, the case studies, the case questions, them or something really similar are on the test a lot. Okay, let me share my screen. Let me get the syllabus pulled up. And did you guys get the syllabus last night?
No.
No? Okay. I emailed them and sent it to Eric and Awana and said, please print this and give it to Deanna. And I never heard back from them. So I thought, I'm not sure they did. So let me share that with you. And then I have sent it to you as well today. All right. So here's your syllabus. Course start date. This is a 16-week course. We meet Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday nights, 6 to 10. If the schedule starts to shift a little bit, just know those nights are what you're responsible for. And you can say, well, I can't come until this time. Well, just know that you're responsible for 6 to 10, those 3 nights of being available. I'm the lecture instructor. There's my email. There's my phone number. You all should have that now. Your lab instructors, the lead instructor is Deanna Cole. She's a certified tech. She's the most seasoned one that we have in the lab currently. I think she's got about 18 years experience. There's her email and phone number. And then we have her and Brandy both are OBGYN techs. And of course, they've had years of experience in all fields, but that is their choice specialty now. Alex, he is a former Horizon student. So he's one of the alumni. He's currently working, let me back up. Deanna and Brandy both work at Sacred Heart in the Women's Center. Alex works at Valley. That's where he did his preceptorship. They offered him a job and he's been working there since. At Valley Hospital, you get a lot of experience as far as they do a lot of variety of cases. So you get a really good well-rounded education there. The required material is the book, and I've got 4th edition on here, and this is because before we knew that we were shifting. And it is published by the Association of Surgical Technology, the AST. Your exams right now, of course, this is before we make any adjustments with the moving. if your lab time is 6 to 8, your exam can only be taken after your lab. This is very important. I've had some students that are going in before their lab time, before that 6 o'clock. And if you don't get done in time, then you're late for lab. That does not work. If your lab is 6 to 8, your exam has to be done after your exam. For students that your lab is 8 to 10, your exam has to be done, of course, before lab because the school closes at 10 p.m. You want to make sure that you allow for plenty of time for that exam because when it is lab time, you have to end that exam and go into the lab. So if you're a slow test taker, or if you really like to review and take your time, give yourself plenty of time. These exams that you're going to be taking, they averaged, and Yolanda helped me on this, I want to say around 30 minutes.
The exams, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're usually like between, I think they're usually like 85 questions, sometimes shorter because
Yeah, so those, I think they cut me off at 55.
yeah, for the other book, I forgot. But yeah, I would usually allow 30 minutes. I tend to go after because I like to take my time and review. So
Yeah.
30 minutes, I would say.
Yeah, so, and I had some that would go longer, and I think if you're concerned, give yourself an hour and get there at 7 o'clock so that you have plenty time, but I doubt you'll need that much time, especially in the beginning. But if you like to really take your slow time and review everything, then by all means do that. And like it says, exam times may not interfere with lab time or you will be counted as tardy and that will contribute to your attendance. And no exams may be taken prior to 6 o'clock unless you have my approval. And you have to have my approval. You can't just go into Nuwana and say, I want to take my test early. That is not acceptable. And she will, I have instructed her to deny that. But if you have arranged it with me and I have okayed it with her that she will be there and will be available because she has set tasks that she has to have completed before class times begin. And so if we're going to have to ask her to stop those tasks and accommodate you going in and taking that early, then we have to plan that ahead of time. So if you're going in to take a makeup, then we may have to do that where you're taking that additional one, but that has to be okayed by me because I have to coordinate that with her. Any questions on the exams or anything that we've covered on the top? Okay, now let's go into the schedule. So of course, last night you should have had, did you guys have orientation with Nuwana? Yep, okay, good. And then went into your lab times with Deanna. And then, so last night was kind of like an intro, getting familiar again, back into the lab. And Deanna and Brandy and Alex have put together a really good term for you guys in the lab. We've been talking for weeks, getting it refined and put together, and they had to make a few changes. So that's why I had the syllabus ready to go out to you guys last week, but they wanted some changes made, so we made that. And so then here we are tonight on Zoom. Now the reading, you can see there's two columns, reading and lab. And so I would highly recommend that you're reading ahead. Read the material before you come to the lecture or before you go to the lab, just so that you are really well familiar with the material. I'm not asking you to do anything that I'm not willing to do. Do you think I've read this whole book? Well, I've read half of it, and now I'm reading the first half of it. So what have I been doing? I've been reading this chapter. So I read this chapter today just to get re-familiar with this material. So again, I'm not asking you to do anything I'm not willing to do. So you will be very prepared, much more prepared if you do read these chapters and go through this material. And so tonight we're looking at chapter 1, which is the orientation to surgical technology. Tomorrow night, you guys have Alex. And he is putting together some equipment and instrument exercises for you guys to do this term to get you really familiar with your equipment and with your instrumentation. He's like a master of instrumentation and equipment. So he is the best tech to get you guys familiar with all of that. He will also be in charge of making sure all your exams are set up once I'm gone, and all of that. So it will work out really well once we shift your exams to Thursday night, because he'll be there. And then next week, so next, I've got it on Tuesday right now, just because that kind of works out better for us the way that we are until the move happens, that you'll have your exam on Tuesday night, either before or after your lab time. Like I said, and Brandy will be with you on that night. And then your reading assignment after that, of course, is going to be chapter 2, because you're going to start working on the next material. And then in your homework will be due, you can turn that in. That, no, it will not, forget me. I'm pretending I'm last term. On Wednesday night, so you're not going to turn homework into the school anymore. You're just going to hold on to that. Wednesday night, next Wednesday night, when we get on, we'll go over the homework and make sure that you guys are understanding the homework. And I know that it'll be after the exam, but I just want to go over it with you so that if you have questions about the format of the homework or anything, we can discuss that. We're not going to like go through it in great detail. And then we'll talk about chapter 2, which is about the legal concepts. It's about risk management and ethical issues. And then of course, lab with Alex on Thursday night. The same thing on week 3. You'll have the exam on Tuesday night and lab with Deanna. And then, oh, this is not true. That's from the old syllabus. And then on Wednesday night, we'll again, quick review of your homework. You'll just let me know what you've done on that. We'll do a quick grading, and then we'll lecture on chapter 3, and then lab with Alex on Thursday night. Then here's where it's going to change up a little bit, because I'll be actually traveling this week. We'll be cross-country traveling. So your homework will be due. And what I'll do is I will post the homework answers for you. You'll grade your own. You'll report to me your grade or how many you've missed, and your lecture will be recorded. And this is special populations. So we'll talk all about that. And then again, Alex on Thursday night. Now they have a syllabus that is very detailed of exactly what they're doing on those nights. So there is a very specific process they have set in place. Then on week 5, this is probably where we'll move the exam to a Thursday. So I'm gonna highlight this part for you, if it will let me. And then I'll resend these back out to you guys, because I've got to adjust that. But this is probably where it will shift to Thursday night, but I'm gonna let you know for absolute sure. But that seems like the best option. And then that will continue where we'll have that move to Thursday night. And the same sequence is just going to continue. And I'm not going to go through every one of these until here we have Thanksgiving break. So this is November 22nd through the 26th. So that week of Thanksgiving, there will be no school that whole week. And then we'll resume the following week, where we will have skills test will begin. The instructors are recreating the skills test grading system. So if you've been through skills test already, it's going to change a little bit, just because we had realized that the grading system was a little, I guess you could say, unfair, in the sense that there are some things that you do in that skills test that are highly important, and other things that are less important. So they're wanting to adjust the scoring of that so that it reflects that. And on that skills test, there will be, and Deanna and Brandy and Alex will make sure that you're made aware of it, but there will be some parts of that exam that are an automatic fail. An example of that would be if you break sterility and you don't call it on yourself, or if you do something grossly contaminating your sterile field and you just kind of cover it up, they can automatically fail you as well. And that will require you to take a remediation, meaning you have to retake that exam. And then you have 2 instructors with you then. So there's skills test 1 on the Thursday night of that 15-week. And that will be for Michaela and John. And then on the following Tuesday night, Deanna and Brandy will test term 2. So that's the 6 of you guys. And then Alex will test Tawny and Yolanda. And that is the end of the term. Any questions? Let me stop the share a minute. Any questions on the syllabus? No. Okay. All right.
Has there, real quick, has there been any updates as far as for, oh gosh, I'm having a brain fart, for clinicals?
Yes, good question. Okay, so I'm working with someone at Providence. Deanna and I both are, because Providence corporate sent me an email saying that they were, as of September, they were not taking any more students from anywhere except WSU. So that's an issue. Kootenai has suspended all elective cases, and that also includes Kootenai Hand Clinic, which is one of our first go-tos. Valley is still operational. Deaconess has suspended, because with the COVID numbers climbing back up, what happens when COVID numbers climb is they stop all elective cases, but mainly they stop all extraneous personnel from coming in. And so that's kind of where we are right now. They have stopped anybody. Columbia is still like getting us in there. So what we're doing right now is we're keeping those doors open on Columbia, and Valley is still open for us. So we've got 2 locations right now. Columbia is Columbia Surgical Center. It's a small privately owned facility. You can get about half of your cases done. I know that one of our former students, Miranda, she did a rotation at Columbia 4 weeks, and then I sent her to Valley. Well, 3 weeks in at Valley, she was done with all of her cases. So then she was just fulfilling her hours. So as far as cases and hours go, you have to do 320 hours, which is 8 40-hour weeks. And the way it's been going lately, because of the elective cases being canceled, they've been getting sent home a lot early. So that's just an issue we're having to deal with COVID. And with Valley, what they're doing is they're allowing the students just to go in central sterile and at least getting their hours. So you're getting your hours done. So like an example, Miranda, she already had all of her cases fulfilled because she almost had them all at Columbia. So she just had to complete those once she got to Valley. And then for the remainder of her hours, they just sent her to sterile processing because there's so few cases right now, just because of electives are shut back down. Trying to think of any new news. But like I said, I do have a contact in Providence that has allowed a student to be in there right now. But we're not sure they'll let us be in after that rotation. So we're hoping by the time that Yolanda, you and Tawny are, it's time for you guys to go in, that something has changed clinically. And at the best, we've only got 2 of you to place, so that will be a little easier than like last term where I had to place 5. So I'm just hoping things like clear up before the next group, which Tyler and Becky and Rachel and Jacqueline, Darby, you guys there's 6 of you guys, and I'm like, things have got to open up. I don't know where I'm gonna put 6 people. So yeah, that's the case with the clinicals. And one good thing is that I will tell you this: if you excel in the lab and you are doing well in your academics, Deanna and I have the ability to push you out to clinicals before you're done with your classes. And we've been doing that as we see it, possibility. And it's because Columbia is so busy, they don't care if you're done with classes. They just want competent hands in there. So once you show the lab instructors, when you have to be in your last term, of course, and we have to be like halfway through the last term. But once you show those lab instructors that you are competent, we can place you then. So that's good to know. And the reason for that is, like one of our students last term, by the time she finished her academics, she was already halfway done with her clinicals. So all she has is, and it's worked out well, because now we're sitting waiting on Valley or somebody, because she's already done 4 weeks at Columbia, so she's done there, and it allowed her to, now she's only got 4 weeks left at somewhere, and boom, she'll have a job. Okay. Speaking of jobs, that's what we're doing next. I'm going to show you guys this. This is super cool. I was looking at this today. Hang on, let me find it. There it is. This is so cool. Okay, you guys know me. I am always on looking at jobs. Thanks, Darby. Darby was telling me about Columbia Surgical Specialist. That's where we have people at right now, Darby, I think. Okay. Wait. Oh, I was about to say, your mom is Kelly? I talked to Kelly. No, I talked to Kristen. She's like the OR manager. Yeah, that's who we have students there now. They are awesome. But I am definitely up for talking to anybody else to get more students in there. Okay, so as you guys, we're going to look at this in our chapter 2, because it does talk about job possibilities, but I like for you guys to look at job possibilities, because it really kind of just keeps your momentum going, and it makes you really want to work hard for this, because travel jobs, if you are someone that has the ability to be flexible, and sometimes you don't even have to be flexible, you can get travel jobs even in your area, but they do require you to usually have 1 year experience. So just keep this on your radar as you move forward. But I just typed in Surg Tech jobs. And you can see here, travel jobs can make up to $4 grand a week. Okay, 16 grand a month is not too bad. I'm kidding, that's pretty dang good. But then you can see here, you can look on Indeed, and I look at Indeed a lot for jobs. There's a ton of jobs out there. And here you're looking at, in Spokane, average is about 70,000. And I would say that's probably about average. You can definitely easily make a 6-figure if you're taking a lot of call and such. I do want to go ahead and start sharing some resources with you. So make sure you got pen and paper to write some of these down. We're going to be, this is NCCT. So this is the testing facility that you got, or testing company that you guys will be testing through. So you will, at the time that you're ready, so you have to be at the end of your program, and you'll take the competency test. And once you have completed this competency test, and I'm giving you this website because I cannot tell you how many times students text me and say, how do I get certified? You go to ncctinc.com and see. So all you have to do to get certified, you have to graduate, of course. You have to take the exam, and you have to fulfill those requirements. Let me show you what those requirements are. And this is the form that you can go ahead and print off so that you don't ask me this 500 times, is that you have to have a minimum of 50 scrubs in general surgery. We're going to go over that, 20 in orthopedic, and then 55 from 2 of these areas. So it could be gynecological, genitourinary, cardiovascular, neurosurgery, OB, so OBGYN, thoracic, peripheral vascular, ophthalmology, otolaryngology, or I'm not even going to say that, ear, nose, and throat's what that is, plastic, reconstructive. And so all of that, you have to have 55 from at least 2 of those. So you're allowed to select 2 areas. So, and you're not going to get cardio cases unless you're in a cardio unit, and neuro the same, and OB the same. So you'll get a ton of, you know, like GYN or GU, or if you're in ENT or plastics, the last 3. So anyway, that is that's your requirement. This is your cases that you have to have completed. You have to have it done within 2 years of graduating. So here's the way that works. If you get your clinical hours done, you get your 320 hours done, but you didn't get all your cases completed, that's fine. You can get a job, take your certification, get a job, and you have 2 years on the job to complete those cases. Once those cases are done, you get your paper of certification. Now, jobs, they only want to know that you've graduated and that you got your certification exam completed. So what that is you can show proof that you've passed the exam, so they know you're just waiting on those cases. Make sense? So that is how that works, and that's what you do there. Okay, let me stop that here. And then, oh, the other resources I wanted to show you real quick, and then we're getting in the material, is this. So make sure that you're ready to write these down, because these are some resources that you're definitely going to want to have access to. YouTube is one of your best support in school. Khan Academy is phenomenal. They have tons of videos on any topic that I'm teaching on, pretty much. If I'm teaching on cardiac, hang on just a second. Rachel's texting, okay. And so anything that I'm teaching on that you're like, I do not know what that means, you can go on here. You can find, like, I love using Khan Academy and just looking at, because I remember when I was in undergrad or med school, I used the chemistry, the biology, and then you can, of course, you can use all of they've got tons of science. They've got Khan Academy medicine, and you can see I'm subscribed to that. It's a really great one, because it really can like walk you through the flow through the heart sounds, embryology, respiratory rate, all different kinds of things that we are going to be covering. So as you can even look up surgeries and stuff and see if that's something. I've not looked to see if the surgeries themselves are on here, but if you're looking at disease processes, it definitely is. Now, another thing that you're definitely going to want to get familiar with is some of the surgical tech channels. Some of my favorites is Surgical Tech Tips. This is, I think his name is Sean. He's great. He's in Las Vegas area, and he's been doing these surgical tech videos for years. You can see this one is about counts of how to count your equipment and all of your material. And this was 4 years ago. He walks you through the process. His support staff helps him do these videos. Surg Tech Academy is a surgical tech school. And this is Mike, and he demonstrates here. He's demonstrating how to gown and glove and how to gown and glove your doctor. Surgical Tech Geek is another creator. You can see they've been doing this a long time. They're teaching, this is a basic setup for an inguinal hernia. And then there was one more. Oh, it was a faculty, so it's another school. Let me find it real quick. It is SWGTC. And you will see I use some of the videos in classes as I need to. So it's just good to be familiar with, I think it's because you have to put in, but you can put in Surg Tech or Surgical Tech. Either way, it's going to come up a little bit different. There's Surg Tech Tips, there's PCC. Well, of course, now I can't find the one that I'm looking for.
The girl who runs the Surgical Tech Geek page, she's really nice.
Yeah.
And if anyone is like on social media, I only use Instagram, but you can message her and she'll chat with you. She'll give you all kinds of advice. And she just published like a little pocketbook that is meant for your clinicals. It's really, really cool. I ordered it.
Oh,
I don't know if she's sold out, but it was like $35, and it's really amazing.
Oh,
So
that is good to know.
yeah, she's really nice.
Cool. Thank you, Yolanda. This SWGTC faculty, that's another channel that's great because they're talking about soft count. And if you're having to independently prep and drape a patient, because there are situations that can be the case, especially if you're in a private facility. Here's closed glove, different things. So those are some resources that I highly recommend that you get familiar with. Any questions? All right, now we're gonna jump in the book. So I was thinking to tell you guys to make sure that you read the preface in the book because it is chock full of good information, but you don't have it. And you only have the odd pages. So before I share again, let me check my email again to see if okay. Okay, no, he hasn't emailed. No. Oh, wait, there it is. Okay, hang on. Let me double check it, make sure it's got all the pages before I tell him yes. Oh, that looks like perfect. All right, let me send this to you guys. All right, I've sent it. You guys should have the email coming to you with all the pages for chapter 1 and 2. Okay, good. Yep, that's all of them. Yay. Yep, that's 26. That's better than 13, Rachel. Thank you so much. Okay. Any questions? All right, I am going to, I just realized I am really close out of water and I'm about to start talking a whole lot more. So I'm going to pause a quick quick minute and go fill up my water. Be right back. Yolanda, I almost called you the other day. We were in Portland and we had got a email that our dog food had delivered on our doorstep. And we were going to be home for like 2 days. And I said, and you know, Springs work is really close to here. I said, I had her to call one of her coworkers. I'm like, if they're not available, I'm going to call Yolanda and see if she can go grab that box for us. I was afraid.
Yeah, you should have.
I know. Well, her coworker they work 3 minutes from here. So she was able to run over here and get it. So
I was in Florida for 2 weeks on break at my mom's, and I had my cat on the auto feeder.
yeah.
And my sister-in-law came by a couple times. She ate herself into like an oblivion. And like when we walked in the door, I audibly like screamed out loud. I was like, oh my God. She was like a gigantic ball of, I was like, I see you were also on vacation. It was hilarious.
No exercise and
Yeah. And the auto feeder, she was probably just eating it. And then like as quick as it come out, she would eat it. So I have her on kitty cat is Lennox or whatever.
that is hilarious. So now you're like, we're going for a walk. I'm putting you on a leash.
Yeah, she's gigantic.
That's hilarious. Like one of those ball of cats, like a cartoon cat now.
Yes.
I get it. So funny. Okay. I think everybody's pretty much back. I think Darby's got faulty Wi-Fi. Because when we are on here, and Darby, I get what's going on with you because I lived in an RV for a long time too, but I really do like if you're present as far as video, but Darby, again, I get it. RV Wi-Fi is different. And I know you guys are present with me. So, okay, Let me check my notes, make sure I covered everything. I do want to cover attendance real quick, and I know that Yolanda covered this. Just keep in mind you have 5 days for the entire program. Those are easy to go through. Darby, you don't have to text me. I know you're present. Okay, yes, I believe you. She can see and hear us. So everybody wave at Darby. Darby. 5 days goes really quickly. Now, we did this last term, kind of broke the rules a little bit, Deanna and I, and did a makeup day in the lab. That will not be available again. So I'm just letting you know. We cashed in our one owner favor there and got that approved. So just moving forward, know that if you miss, it counts. Now, I will say if you contract COVID and you have a positive test for us, and that's all we need, and you're not necessarily, it's not counted against you, okay? Because we don't want you at the school. If you go on vacation, things like that, and it happens. It's life, we're living a life. So you just kind of have to choose what you're having there. It also does count your clinical days. Although I will go ahead and say, I don't know when the students miss a clinical day so much, but it definitely counts your academic days. So if you miss any of the labs or lecture, that is counting on your 5. So 5 goes fast in a whole year. So just be aware of that and just be really conscious of it. What I will say is if you find that you're getting close to your 5, make an appointment with Eric, because he is the one that you have to talk to about attendance, because he has the ability to remove you from the program at the 5th day missed. So, but I will say, if you talk to him, if you've been doing well in school, because when that happens, he talks to me and he's like, how are they doing? Are they present in lectures? There's a lot of information that he wants to know as far as, because that weighs really well for you or against you. If I'm like, they're there, but they're distracted the whole time, they're barely passing their exams, he's not going to have a whole lot of leniency for you. If I can report to him, they're there all the time, they're interacting with the class, they're doing well on their exams, they're a very good student, that weighs very well for you. Make sense? It's just like a job, you perform well, you get a little bit more leniency. And no, I'm not drinking. It's just a cool glass. No, okay, I gotta show you. So, I'm from Alabama. So I love going to the distilleries in Tennessee. We got Jack Daniels, Jim Beam, all those. This glass that I have, it came from the Jack Daniels distillery, and it was from the master distiller. Like his little signature is engraved on the glass. I don't have any Jack Daniels, but I like the glass. So anyway, it holds about the right amount of water that I need. Okay, I'm done jabbering. I'm ready to teach. You guys ready to learn? Okay. Let me find that lecture. And here we go. Okay. Let's learn a little bit. Okay, orientation. And now as I go through, if you have questions, stop me and ask me. Don't mind at all. Just unmute yourself and fully interrupt me here, because this is your time. It's your education. I want you to be, I want you to feel free to ask the questions. All right. So after this chapter, you will be able to demonstrate the principles of communication in the surgical setting. Also trace the historical development of surgical technology. You should have gotten the study guide already. So you will know that some of the questions on that study guide pertain to the principles of communication, the historical development, as well as recognizing the members of the surgical team and their roles. And we're going to go over that. And then just be able to describe the surgical technology professional organizations. Of course, every professional organization, every profession has a professional organization. So ours is the Association of Surgical Techs, and we're going to go over all of those. ARC, STCA, NB, STSA, blah, blah, blah. Lots of letters. Compare and contrast the various roles of the surgical technologist and interpret the components of a job description for the surgical technologist. Analyze the components of effective teamwork and communication. Discuss the meaning of surgical conscience and application to surgical technology. Summarize the different types of healthcare facilities, because there's a lot. Analyze a typical hospital organizational structure. We'll look at that because it's important to know kind of how the organization works. Classify hospital departments and their relationship to surgical services. And you may think none of that's really important to me, but it actually is very important to you because you play an important role in the service to the patients, and it is very important to understand how the entire system works together. All right, so first we're going to go into talking about the history of surgery. So in the Western world, and so if you have your book or if you are looking at the page, when we're talking about the history, it's on the very first page, and in the 4th edition, it's on page 3. And it talks about how that the history of medicine, science, and intellectual development, this was, in the very beginning, they were just trying to figure it out. The intellectual development had not fully occurred yet. So like their thought about anatomy was rudimentary. And so then of course their thought about surgery was as well rudimentary. So thinking of surgery all the way back to the beginning, it was then later proven to be inaccurate in a lot of ways. During the classical period, it was revolutionized. Hippocrates and Aristotle and Galen, they all began to really bring an anatomy into the thinking, but it also was inaccurate as well in a lot of times. And then of course in the Middle Ages, the intellectual achievement was very limited. Now, during the Renaissance period, Vesalius, who is considered like the father of modern anatomy, proved that a lot of the thinking before him was really incorrect. So that, he was able to use basically like cadavers and, basically performing autopsies to explore and better understand the human anatomy. So he's considered basically the father of founder and father of human anatomy, modern human anatomy as we know it. What they also realized was that to be able to perform a surgical procedure, that they had to be certain mechanisms that were controlled. One, pain. You can't just do a surgery on someone without controlling the pain. You can't do surgery without controlling the hemorrhaging, because if they're hemorrhaging uncontrollably, then the blood loss is going to result in death, as well as infection. We cannot perform surgical procedures without controlling the infection. So surgery as we know it today is a 20th century phenomenon. The timeline, you can look at the timeline on table 1.1, and it starts all the way in 4000 BC, where this is where the cuneiform script where the first anatomical description of human organ tablets were found. And then it moves into the time of Aristotle in 500 BC, where they were doing comparative anatomy, to Galen in 500 AD, and he was considered the first great anatomist. And then Vesalius, though, in 1500, really challenged that thought process that was before him with Galen and performed those dissections on the human cadavers, being able to create illustrations. Like there's some really rudimentary illustrations from that were able to give those previous beliefs, really showed that that was not the case. Then in 1850, Pasteur, who is the founder of the father of microbiology, virology, and immunology. And then Lister, who Listerine is named after, developed the antiseptic technique and antiseptic surgery. And then Roentgen, I can never say his name right. Roentgen, can't remember. Anyway, he developed the X-ray machine. So he was German. And so that made a huge change in the surgical history once they were able to use that technology of the X-ray machines to be able to see with, prior to having to perform the surgery. And then in 1950, DeBakey, and we've got a lot of instruments, named after DeBakey. DeBakey developed the first ventricular assist pump. So that was very paramount in cardiovascular surgical procedures, because just before that, Cooley perfected the heart-lung machine. And that's when, in 1950, the first heart transplant was performed. And then it just continues on today. I think 20 years ago, how long I've been in medicine? I've been in medicine almost 30 years now. And thinking of the progression of medicine over that span of time is astounding. So as I think back on that, I'm like, what is the next 30 years going to show us? Like how far are we going to be advanced in 30 years compared to where we are now? We think we're really advanced now, but then I look back 30 years and I'm like, wow, we knew nothing then compared to what we know now. So it's just quite amazing. So surgery today is really quite astounding when we look at the microscopes and the robotic surgeries and so many devices that are just going to blow your mind in that OR. So looking at different types of surgeries, they are classified as far as needs. And so we're going to talk about these because this is really important, especially like right now we're looking at this time of COVID and all elective and optional surgeries are taken off of the cases. And so now we're only using urgent and emergent cases in today's hospital settings due to COVID. So here's what those look like. An emergent case, this means that the pathology is threatening either life or limb. An example of that would be like a AAA that's ruptured. So that's a ascending abdominal aorta, right? If that is ruptured, that is definitely life-threatening. There's some other things. If there's a severed limb in a trauma, that is pathology threatening the life or limb, because even a severed limb could threaten life because of a lot of extenuating circumstances. So those are emergent cases. Urgent cases is a case where treatment surgical treatment is required within a short period of time. So this is a ectopic pregnancy that is unruptured, but if it continues, we know that it will rupture. And so, we know we have a short period of time in which to surgically treat that condition. So that's an urgent case. Now, elective case is something that doesn't have an immediate need. Now, when I think about this, I think, well, the patient might feel like it has an immediate need, but if we're looking at, can it threaten your life or limb? No. If you tear a meniscus, if you tear a rotator cuff, if you need hip replacement, knee replacement, is that threatening life or limb? No. So it is considered an elective case. So at this time, it is removed from the caseload. Optional is something that does not really even have to be performed. So we're talking here like a rhabdectomy. That is a facelift. That is something that is very optional. It's not even elective, it is optional. Elective means that it needs to be done, but that there's not an immediate need for it. So knowing the difference in those is going to be important, especially once you're in the, this is things that you need to learn now, because once you are in that clinical setting and you're hearing this language, you need to understand the classifications so that you know an elective compared to an optional, compared to urgent and emergent. Okay. And then of course, there's tons of different types of specialties. So a general surgeon is not considered a specialty. And a general surgeon is someone who does almost every type of surgery that's in the general format. So that could be GI, it could be hepato, which is liver, it could be GU, so that's the urinary tract. It could even be a little bit on the side of orthopedic, but not in the detail. So it could be skin, so derm, it could, there's a lot of things that it could be that are not within a specialty realm. But then there are 14 specialties, and we've got them named on, there's a page somewhere. I don't know. Here it says refer to the text for a list. Oh, I think there is a list of them somewhere. It's in here. So, but then each specialty also has subspecialties. And what they mean by that is, so let's take ophthalmic. Then you could have, or I'm thinking of like, there's also like oncology. Well, then there's also like pediatric oncology or pediatric orthopedic. So see, you've got orthopedic, which is a specialty, then you have a subspecialty of pediatric. So some of those, let me find it real quick. I had looked at it earlier. So general surgeons, like digestive system, hepatobiliary, so that's like the liver, bile duct, pancreas, gallbladder, thyroid and parathyroid glands, general skin lesions, breast lesions, and then specialties, we're looking at, of course, the OBGYN specialties, ophthalmic, otorhinologic, I don't want to say this word, I'm going to say it. It's ENT, it's ear, nose, throat, otorhinolaryngology. There, said it once, I'm not saying it again. Oral and maxillofacial surgery. So that is, and then reconstructive, so plastic, genitourinary, cardiothoracic. So that's definitely not a general surgeon going to do cardiothoracic, as well as neuro. And then peripheral vascular. So a neurosurgeon is not even, a neurosurgeon is not going to do peripheral vascular. So they're not going to operate on veins and arteries because they're about nerves. But you can see there's different specialties within the field of surgery, and they don't usually cross the lines, okay? Sometimes a general surgeon can cross a line to a degree, but the important thing about surgeons is most of the time they know where that line is. And because they're taking their license in their hand, they're taking that patient's life in their hand. If it's out of their realm of knowledge, most of the time they'll call in a specialist to come in and assist on that. So you may have a case where you've got a surgeon, but then you've also got a specialist in there as well that is taking care of the minute details that the surgeon is not comfortable with. Oh, and we talked about this. Okay. All right. And this is in here a few times. So within each classification, there are 3 phases of surgery, and we're going to talk about this a lot. And it's important that you know, because you're going to hear it from now on, that there's pre-op, intra-op, and post-op. So, and perioperative is all 3 of those phases. Peri means around, and so it's all of them. And we're going to go into each one of those in great detail. Now, there's also, thinking even back to the beginning of surgical technology, involved in cases, there's non-physician and non-nursing assistants that were involved. And so these, and I think there's I can't remember the name, Mr. somebody, and it talks about him like this. Surgical technology started in Europe, in Britain, after the World War II, when this man started assisting in the OR and became very knowledgeable. And so it kind of started the whole profession of surgical technologists to have a non-surgeon in the OR assisting the surgeon in the role that is not in a physician type role. So it's really interesting as you read through this chapter to learn just more about the history. Then there, of course, there's some key events in the history of surgery, of surgical technology, and you can read about that on that table 1-2, and I'll let you look through that in your leisure time. Okay, so the surgical team, there are 4 members of the surgical team. When we're just talking about surgical team, we typically are talking about those 4 members. Number 1 is the surgeon. Number 2 is the first scrub. We can have multiple scrubs. 2 is usually the most you'll have in there, but the first scrub is the main member of the team. Then the anesthesia care provider, so it would be either an anesthetist or a nurse anesthetist or an anesthesiologist. And then there's the circulating nurse. We're going to go into these in detail because it's important that you understand the role of these, because in the lab you will play these roles, because you have to fully understand the roles, because especially if you're working in a smaller facility, you may be performing these roles of not the anesthesia or the surgeon, but you may be first scrub, you may be the assistant, or you may be the circulator. So it's important that you understand these roles and how they work. So those 3 phases of the surgical case, 1 being pre-op. So this is everything that occurs prior to the initiation of the surgical procedure. Can anyone tell me what is designated as the initiation of surgical procedure?
Is it making sure you have the right patient?
That's great. That is definitely included in pre-op. What can somebody, what
The
is
first cut.
the first cut? That is the initiation of the surgical procedure. So the moment that that doctor asks for the scalpel, you're still in pre-op, right? As he preps and he's holding that blade over the skin, you're still in pre-op. The second he makes the incision, you're in intraoperative. So that is the time that occurs while the procedure is being performed. So from the time that he has made that first incision, you're intraoperative. Post-op begins when the procedure is terminated. So this is when the last stitch is in. So that then you're now in post-op. There is a okay, and what do you think is one of the things that happens in the beginning of the post-op phase with the patient. Stitches are in, they've closed. Now, what do you think happens?
Extubation.
Yeah.
Well, they're probably going to dress the wound before they extubate. So extubation is removing the breathing tube. So they're going to, you're going to completely, so post-op is began once the last stitch is in. And a part of that post-op procedure is dressing the wound. Surg techs are really important in that role of being able to provide and dress the wound. So the lab techs will show you how to do that. And during each of these phases, let's think about if we're doing an endoscopic procedure. Okay, the endoscopic tube is going to be placed because the patient is going to be sedated during pre-op. The endoscopic tube is going to be placed during pre-op. But if there's a laparoscopic and they're needing to make incision for those trocars, which are I can't even think, the pieces of equipment that allow the laparoscopic tools to be fed through, those require an incision. So those are not placed during pre-op. So pre-op, you got endoscopic tubes, intubation, so breathing tubes, all of that is still done. And then once the procedure starts, intraoperative, once post-op is happening, then that's when everything is removed. So Yolanda, you're right. ET tube is removed, so they're breathing, that's a breathing tube. Endoscopic tubes, you know, all endoscopic tubes are going to be removed, all of that. So that gives you those three phases. And I think we talk about it a little bit more as well. But I think we're going to talk about what you're going to do in each one of those phases. Yes, we are. Okay. First, we're going to talk about some non-sterile surgical team. So here's remember, here's your 4 members of the team: surgeon, first scrub, anesthesia, circulator. Here's who is non-sterile. They are not sterile. They can help you because they are not sterile. Your circulator, who is always either a registered nurse and a licensed nurse, a licensed practical or vocational nurse, or a surgical tech. So there are times that as a surgical tech, you'll have to be performing in that circulator role. Let me respond to Rachel. She just got on. And then, so remember, these are non-sterile. Circulator, non-sterile. They have not scrubbed in. They do not have on sterile gloves. They do not have on sterile gowns. They are in there. They have on scrubs. They have on hair cover. They have on shoe cover. And a lot of times they will have on gloves, depending on what they're doing. They're not sterile gloves, and they may not have on gloves. So they are able to work with you outside of that sterile field, so they can help you get things. They can help with your cord attachments. You'll be handing things off to them off of the sterile field. They'll be handing things onto the sterile field. They are your person between everything that you need that's not in your sterile field and your sterile field. So they are a massive part of your team. Anesthesia provider, so this is a physician or a certified nurse, registered nurse anesthetist. And then you'll also may have a rad tech or a pathologist in there. And this is because a lot of times they're going to have x-rays going on during your surgery, just for better visualization for your surgeon. Pathologist may be in there as well because you're going to be removing tissue specimens that the pathologist needs to review immediately, because then it allows the surgeon to know what step to take next. An example of that, you may be on a case where they're removing cancerous tumors from the breast. Well, if the pathologist is in the room, that tissue is removed. The pathologist reviews it immediately. He can determine if the breast needs to be removed or if it can remain. So you can see there's an example of why a pathologist may be in the room. And it's not something that you really want to send upstairs to the lab and wait on it. You need a pathologist in the room with you, and they can perform that test there and the decision can be made. So non-sterile is circulator, anesthesia, and x-ray techs or pathologists. Now, who's sterile? Well, your surgeon, and you may have an assistant surgeon, so you may have more than one surgeon in there. First scrub, and that is during case management, of course, pre-op, intra, and post-op. And then you may have a second scrub in there as well, because sometimes there are some really big cases that you'll be in on that it takes 2 scrubs to run that case. And so both of them are usually scrubbed in and assisting the surgeon and the assistant surgeon throughout the case. And so those are the sterile team members. So this is what I'm gonna go through, and this is from the book. In my book, it is on page 8 and 9. We're gonna walk through kind of like what is in each step for you so that you really understand what your role is as a surgical tech during each phase of surgery. Okay. During pre-op, 1, you're going to don the OR attire and personal protection equipment. So that's your OR attire would be your hair cover, your shoe cover, your scrubs. Of course, scrubs are really important in this to keep all pathogens that you may have brought in from home. You've got your OR shoes on and then your shoe covers. Over that, you're going to don the OR attire and the PPE. So that would be all those things we just mentioned. Then you're going to assist with the surgical site verification. Now, this is really important because there's many cases where the surgery was performed on the wrong limb, on the wrong side of the body, many errors that were done before this was put into place. So now the surgeon has to mark the body, the location of the procedure, and his initials, his or her initials have to be on that location now. So the scrub is going to help with that surgical site verification because the surgeon is marking that site in the room before they're brought into the OR. So pre-op actually. And so you're helping to verify that this is the patient that is assigned to this case. Assisting with correct patient identification, that's it. It's a procedure called timeout. For those of you that are new, the scrubs are going to go through that with you in the OR where you know how to do timeout, where you're definitely involved in timeout, where they're doing correct patient identification, medications, allergies, what the procedure is, all of that. And then you're going to assist with preparing the OR. That includes gathering any necessary equipment and supplies. It's even about the furniture. You think furniture in the OR, that's like the tables, all of the equipment. There's a lot of devices in there. So it does need to be arranged in a specific manner. And then opening sterile supplies, instruments, and equipment. There is a procedure and a way to open those sterile supplies onto your back table in a way that you're not contaminating your field. Creating and maintaining that sterile field. Starting now, I want you to have it in your mind from this point forward that your #1 job is to protect your sterile field at all costs. Even if you make someone mad, if you have to aggressively protect your sterile field, that is your job. Performing surgical scrub and donning sterile gown and gloves. And you may have done the sterile scrub last night for the first time. You will learn how to don the sterile gown and gloves as well, and you'll do it every week. Organizing the sterile field. This is really important that you know how to organize the sterile field for the most efficient usage. There is no exact way that every scrub does this, but there are some ways that are the most optimal and efficient. And it is important that you learn from your instructors how to do that the best way that works for you, that keeps you safe. And what I mean by that is you're going to work with your scrubs. They're going to teach you how to do it so that you don't have a needle stick, a scalpel stick, break your sterile field, tear your sleeve on a rake. There's lots of ways that you can learn how to do it most efficiently. And then performing the scrub, we already said that, organizing the field, performing initial sponge, sharps, and instrument count. You'll learn how to do that. So that's making sure that you're counting every piece of equipment that is going to have the potential to go into the body. If it has the potential to go inside the body, it has to be counted prior to incision. So pre-op, you're counting all of that equipment. Make sure, and this is before the incisions are made, so you're counting all of your sponges, so anything that may be used to absorb blood, any sharps, and then all of your instruments. And so those all have to be counted pre-op and post-op to make sure that the same count is there pre and post. And then assisting team members during entry of the sterile field. So there's a lot of team members that are coming in and around the sterile field. So you're really just kind of making sure that no one is contaminating that. And then assisting with placing sterile drapes to expose the operative site. So as your surgeon's coming in and you're draping the patient, you're getting all of there's lots of cords and tubes that are coming in and out of the sterile field. So it's just making sure that everything is secure with your draping. And so all of that is done pre-op. You're like, wow, that's a lot. And we've not even opened this patient up yet. You're right. So that's all pre-op. Now, first incision's made. Now we're in intraoperative case. So now you're going to maintain the sterile field. Again, Elia, that is your #1 priority, is maintain that sterile field, including establishing what we call a neutral zone. The text will teach you about a neutral zone. A neutral zone is basically an area of your field between you and the surgeon where it's neutral and you're able to lay a scalpel there and they're able to pick it up. Because if I hand you a scalpel, then we're risking the chance of you reaching for it incorrectly or me handing it to you incorrectly and there being an incident of someone being cut by that scalpel. So there has been the introduction of a neutral zone. Some facilities use it, but not all, but you do need to be familiar with it so that you're prepared to use it if your facility does, or if your surgeon does. Passing instrumentation, equipment, and supplies to the surgeon and the surgical assistant as needed. So the scrubs are going to teach you how to correctly pass instruments to reduce that risk of incidents happening. And so knowing how to perform that, you'll learn hand gestures and you'll also learn anticipation. So in assessing and anticipating the needs of the patient and the surgeon to provide the necessary items in order of the need. So as you move through, you will actually learn some procedures step by step so that you are anticipating what the doctor's going to need next, and you've already got it ready to hand to them. That cuts down on the time that a case takes, and it just creates a more fluid and efficient procedure being done. You're also going to prepare irrigation fluids. So your circulator is going to fill your fluid container on your table for you of sterile water, and you will learn, and some of you already know how to fill your asepto syringe so that you're prepared to provide that for the physician. So that all of that is being done intraoperative a lot of times. Sometimes it can be done pre-op. And then preparing and handling medications. So you may already have medications drawn up and ready for the doctor, but most of the time you don't. That's going to be happening during the case because you're going to be listening to the doctor's needs of what they, they may need 10 mils of 1% lidocaine. And so you've got a vial of lidocaine and you've got a syringe there, so you draw it up for them. And so preparing and handling medications is something that you've got to be efficient with. Counting the necessary items again, caring for specimens. So the doctors will be collecting specimens, so you have to know how to care for those. Initiating that final count of necessary items, clearing residual blood and skin prep solutions from the patient's skin, preparing and applying surgical dressings as directed by the surgeon. And that is all during intraoperative. And this contradicts itself a little bit. And then post-op. So then you're going to maintain that sterile field until the patient is out of the OR. You never break your sterile field. You never take off your gloves, anything until that patient has left the room and you started breaking down your sterile field. Then you're going to separate the items. You're going to start disinfecting the sterile field. You're going to remove the used instruments, equipment, and supplies. You're going to clean them in the OR for that gross debris. You're going to place all sharps in the secured contaminated sharps containers, place contaminated items in the biohazard bags, prepare and transport the instruments and equipment to the decontamination area. So there's an area in the hospital that all of that is going to go to. And then you assist with room turnover. So now you're ready to get the room cleared and clean and prepared the OR for the next patient. Okay. And then you can read through here on this, and it talks about the duties of the physician and the surgical assistant. So I just wanted to make sure that we went through like what all is your responsibility in those three phases. So any questions on that? Nope. Okay. All right. So looking at your profession as a whole, we just talked about how much you're going to be doing in that surgical procedure. So you can see that you are very much an integral part of the surgical team. Of course, you work under the supervision of a surgeon. You're in that surgical environment. You're using the theory and application of sterile technique. You have to have the knowledge of human anatomy, pathology, meaning what goes wrong, and the surgical procedures to repair that pathology. So you have to know this knowledge. There are different levels of your profession, and the amount of human anatomy, pathology, and procedures that you're familiar with and that you develop more and more understanding of, that's going to advance you in those different classifications of where you're at, different levels. So let's talk about the professionalism of this job. And this is something that's really important to me because I'm a highly professional physician. I've been in the medical field, like I said, since '95. And being a professional is really important to me. I fully believe in having a lot of fun at work and enjoying my work, but there is a line that I never cross, and that is making sure that I maintain that professionalism when I'm in a patient setting, when I'm in a medical setting. So Professionalism, what does it mean? It's that maintaining that competence in a specialized body of knowledge and skills. And so where you're at, you're beginning, and you're in the beginning phase. Even if this is your last term, this is still the beginning of developing that competency in the workplace. You've got to be committed and competent in the workplace. Now, there's several traits that are required for professionalism, and one is honesty. You may think, well, what's honesty got to do with it? Well, you've got patients' lives on the line. If I break sterility and I deny it, who am I hurting? The patient. I'm hurting myself just because I'm showing people that I'm not honest, that I don't have integrity. But the one I'm putting the most at risk is the patient. If I am honest and I say, man, I messed up, then that raises my level of professionalism. I will say this, as a physician, I have really screwed up sometimes. Every doctor does. And I have found the patient respects me the most when I call them and I say, listen, I made a mistake and I need to talk to you about it. Here's what happened. This is totally my fault. I take full responsibility. I did this. Here's how I want to fix this, and go about that. And the patients are like, I get it. You're human. We all do that. What if I had said, I didn't make that mistake? They would have sued me. You know, patients will sue me if I deny that I did something. But if I made a mistake, and it's not a mistake that was like life-threatening or anything like that, but I just made a mistake. I'm like, totally, and here's an example. A few months ago, I totally forgot to order labs on a patient. Just completely forgot. Well, they called the office, they reminded me, and then I was like, oh gosh. And I just had to send them an email, and I was like, holy, my fault. I let this slip through the cracks. You know what? They were like, I get it. I'm busy too. And it's about being honest. It's about owning your mistakes, and that they're always respected more than someone that denies it. Because I'll tell you this, we've had students, you know, in this program, and I've had students through the years in different programs I've worked with, that if they are not willing to own their mistakes and learn from them, I am not recommending them for a job. And I'm very reluctant to place them in a clinical facility under our school's name when I know they cannot be accountable for their own actions. So what do? I hold them back and I make them go through the program again to a degree. And I'm like, you're not ready. I'm not putting you out there under the school's name. And so just know that if you're in the OR or if you're in the lab and you make a mistake, own it, because that's the only way that we learn, is by making mistakes. We never learn by doing things perfect, do we? No. How do we do it? We make mistakes. We screw it up over and over and over until we figure, oh, that is not the way they do it. I did that 3 times before. It didn't work well. Now I'm going to do it right. When you get in this OR settings and in the lab settings, you are going to screw up, and thank goodness you do. And I've always told students, school is where we want you to screw up. We want you to be honest about it and say, I think I just broke. Did you notice if I broke? And the great thing about being in this program is you guys have got to depend on each other and say, watch me. If I break sterility, tell me. And I'm not going to argue with you about it. Because if you see me break sterility and you're going to be like, you just touched, and I'm going to be like, I didn't even feel it, but I believe you, and just change. So honesty is huge. That's a really important trait in being a professional. Cooperative. If you have, and we're going to talk about attitude in a few minutes, but if you are cooperating with this team, you're going to go far. If you are not cooperating well, first of all, they're not even going to offer you a job at the end of your rotation, which that's why we put you in these clinical settings to try to get you hired on as a, you know, for the job. And if they find that you are not cooperating, they're not going to offer you a job because you're not a professional. Ability to problem solve and prioritize. So if you're in a case and you have things that are going wrong in the case, One good thing is, as a scrub, you're working with multiple doctors, right? And you're seeing things done multiple ways. And the great thing is, after you've been doing this a few years and the doctors are getting comfortable with you, they'll trust you. And they may say, Tyler, I know that you work with Dr. So-and-so. You have any ideas? How can we do this differently? You may say, well, here's the way he does it. It may not work, but here's what I'm seeing. Now you say, great idea. Or you may be working with somebody else and they're like, Yolanda, I don't know what to do here. What would you do? And they really get in those situations where they ask for the scrubs problem solving and ideas because you've seen things done from different doctors. Prioritizing. So, as you're in a case, things are going to go wrong, right? And so you're in your mindset of anticipating the next needs in that procedure. And then something went wrong over here and you're not looking just right this moment. You're actually getting ready and you and your nurse are doing your soft count. Well, something's going wrong in the sterile field. Well, are you going to stay hardcore and you're like, no, forget you guys, we're doing this soft count? Or are you going to drop what you guys are doing and you're going to go help your surgeon? You got to be able to prioritize. And that is a form of professionalism. And I can bet many of you are going, there's no way anybody would ignore it. Yes, there is. People that are like not professionals, they will stay focused on what they're doing and forget, about prioritizing about the patient. Professionalism also includes the obligation to support and develop the profession. So this is really important when you're looking at joining your state organization, your national organization, going to those conferences and not only just developing your own knowledge base and your continuing education, but developing the profession. Because I think back 30 years ago, I didn't know any scrubs. I didn't know there even was a profession called surgical technologist. I just knew that there were people that worked in the OR with the doctors. I didn't know what they were or what they did. And like I was telling you years ago, it's probably 20 years ago, I was working in the OR. I didn't know that this was a profession that you could go to school for that. I honestly thought they were just trained on the job. And at that point they might've been, but you've got to really support your profession in every way possible. And one way of doing that is being a professional and representing it as such, okay? Just keep that in mind. The most important skill is your attitude, okay? You can have the best sterile techniques on the planet, but if you have a bad attitude, one, you're not gonna get a job because nobody wants a bad attitude person in the OR. And you can see these two girls, positive attitude, yep, I did it, I'm totally guilty, I broke sterile field, or hey, I'm here as a team player, I'm here to serve this patient. This girl on the right, Miss Negative Attitude, she's about, who, me? I didn't do that. I'm just here for the job. I'm here for a paycheck. No. And I bet you guys all know somebody like each one of these women on this screen, right? You guys know somebody, one of each? I do. I know quite a few on each side of these. And I will tell you, let me ask you this. If you owned a hospital, which girl would you hire? Would you hire Miss Negative Attitude? I might hire her to, no, I wouldn't. Never mind that. So you can see your attitude is more important than your skills. Okay. The skills will come if you're dedicated. If you don't have the right attitude, you need to get out now. You need to find something else that your attitude don't matter so much. Like customer service for Verizon or something like that. So I'm speaking from experience there. So just saying, you know, get your attitude adjusted now by yourself so that when you go into that lab, that you are ready to be a professional, to be honest, be respectful, to be accountable, to have high integrity, and to be there for the patient. If you are not there for the patient, get out of the program, save yourself the worry, okay? And I'm not saying this because I don't like any of you, because that's not the case. I'm saying you're setting yourself up for a long road of misery if you don't like serving others, because this job is about being a major team player and being able to work well with others. Okay, questions? Okay. All right, we're gonna go through this kind of quick because it's kind of boring. You can read it on your own. The education and certification, we went through a lot of this. Of course, there's the education was kind of all created by these two groups, the Commission on Accreditation of Allied Health Education Programs, because surgical technologist is considered an allied health program. And then the Accreditation Review Council on Education in Surgical Technology and Surgical Assisting. Then the certification, of course, is the National Board of Surgical Technology and Surgical Assisting. And I will say this, there are states that after, and you can see this in the book, and I think it's in here a little bit, that there's a ladder. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But there are some states that allow surgical technologists to advance to the point of being a surgical assistant. And I don't know if Washington is one of those states or not, but I know that there are some. So you could move up to the level of a surgical assistant. And then of course the AST, which is the American or Association for Surgical Technologists, is the professional organization for STs. And that's who wrote the book. They are a nonprofit professional organization, and it ensures that you have the knowledge and skills required to administer patient care. The mission statement is enhancing the profession to ensure quality patient care. And it is a moral and legal duty that your obligation is to the patient. Okay. There is a table, and in my book, let me look and see really quickly if I can see what page it's in on yours. Yeah, I'll find it later. Okay. But there's a statement, I mean, a table, it's about role definitions of the CST. All right, let's talk about career development and opportunities, because those of you that know me at all, I'm all about career advancement and development, okay? From this point forward, I want you to always think of yourself as self-employed. I don't care if you work for Sacred Heart. I don't care who you work for. From now on, think of yourself as self-employed, okay? Who's going to advance your career? You. Who's going to get more knowledge and education if they want to advance? You. Who's going to pay for it? You. The hospital might reimburse you, but don't expect them to. And don't cut yourself short from gaining the knowledge and training that will advance you because your hospital won't pay for it. Invest in yourself from now on and consider yourself self-employed. And what I mean by that is always invest in you. Don't wait on somebody else to do it. So invest in your career development and the opportunities will come. So a lot of some of the examples of areas that scrubs are employed is in hospitals, of course, labor and delivery facilities, as well as the hospital ambulatory surgery centers. So we're looking at places like Columbia Surgical Center or Columbia Surgical Specialist. That is a ambulatory surgery center where it's not a hospital, it's just a surgery center. There's also some, and I think we're going to talk about this as well. There are some like private doctor's offices that perform surgical procedures in their office. And so a lot of times, so they'll have scrubs employed as well. Basic employability skills. So these are some things that you, on top of your good attitude and your professionalism, you got to have good work ethics. What a good work ethics means for me, number one is be on time. If you're late every day, or if I don't ever know if I can count on you, I'm not going to keep you around because I got cases every day and I might have 7 cases today and I don't know if I can count on you to be there. You've got good work ethics. I know you're going to be there every day. You're dependable. A detail oriented. This is a job that requires it. You will learn how to be detail oriented. And so I don't care if you're not detail oriented at home, as long as you know how to do it on the job, you'll do well. Communication skills, we're going to go through that. You've got to be good at that. Dedication and adaptability. You got to be able to adapt because you're going to have some surgeons that, pardon my French, they're assholes. And they are going to make you dance around in different ways than all the other doctors do. And you're going to have to be adapting really quickly, and you just have to be able to go with the flow. And then responsibility and accountability. We've already talked about all that, but it's highly important. Personal appearance and hygiene. Please take a bath every day. Brush your teeth, put on deodorant. Keep all that stuff in your locker. You will have the ability, because you're going to be standing for hours at a time. Make sure that you keep personal hygiene supplies in your locker, in your bag, so that you're always maintaining freshness. Keep baby wipes in there. I'm sorry I'm having to say this, but believe me, there's a reason I'm having to say this. It's like the person on the class on a motorcycle. It's happened before, so I'm having to say it now. Make sure that you are keeping your personal hygiene top notch. Don't make me have to come to a clinic and tell you to take a bath. Key characteristics of a surgical tech. 1, ability to prioritize. Like I was talking about, you're able to like see what's going on. You're able to prioritize what is most important and what can wait till later. You're able to consider alternative solutions because as you get into a case, and always when I'm talking about this, I always think about orthopedics, because orthopedics is kind of like building a puzzle. You kind of got to be able to problem solve and look at all the different solutions that could be there. Evaluate the problem, see if it can be solved on an individual basis. Ability to work with others as a team. Looking at the results of a solution and determining if that solution can be provided if it's re-encountered. So, or if it can be improved. So if you're in a case and you see something happen and you're like, oh, if I do that again, I'm going to do it this way, a little bit different, so it's better. So that's a really good characteristics. In the job description, may establish criteria in which the surgical tech will be judges in a case concerning alleged negligence or malpractice. Hang on just a minute. May establish, I do not know what this means. In which I don't think it means judges. I think it meant judged in a case concerning alleged negligence or malpractice. So what this is referring to is that in the case of malpractice, so like if you're working with a surgeon and that surgeon is being sued for malpractice, you may be called in to testify based on your role in the case. And so here we're talking about, was there negligence or malpractice? It could be on your part, it could be on the surgeon's. So this is where it's really important to protect your sterile field at all times. One thing that you're going to have to do in that protecting the sterile field, you're watching your physician as well, right? You're watching your surgeon. What are you going to do if your surgeon breaks sterile field but doesn't realize it?
Tell them.
You're going to tell them. What if they say, no, I didn't?
Ask them to check.
Good answer. You could also ask another provider in there, but if you saw it, if you know you saw it, you have to stand your ground. And Deanna is the world's best to teach you how to do that because she does it all the time. So that is one big thing, that you have to be able to stand your ground, because what if they say, no, I didn't, and they continue going, and that case is a malpractice case, and you have to stand up there and say, I told him and he ignored me. So and the patient died. You have to stand your ground, because then you're also liable. If you knew the sterility was broken by the surgeon and the case continued and the patient died, they could hold you liable. Employment options, there's a list of those in the book, and we can look at that later. Okay, interview preparation. When it's time, I can definitely help you prepare for that, because I've hired and fired more people than I want to admit. And I'm an interviewing master, so I am really good at helping people prepare for interviews. And then, of course, a resignation that can be written or verbal when you're leaving a facility. Now, the clinical ladder. This is the clinical ladder programs. This is a table that you definitely want to look at if you have your book or once you get your book. In mine, it is table 1-6. I'll look in the new one. This is really talking about the different levels of a surgical technologist as a practitioner. So there's the entry-level practitioner, which is what you will be once you get out of school. You're new, you know your anatomy, you know your procedures, you know your aseptic techniques, you know how to do the job in a basic level. So you are an entry-level practitioner. Then there's a level 2, which is a proficient practitioner. So this is someone that, let me look, they've got for 1 year or more. So once you've been in the profession 1 year or more, and you're taking on greater responsibility, you're expanding your knowledge base, you're demonstrating critical thinking, you're working with the team in a more advanced way. That is a level 2 proficient practitioner. Then there's a level 3, and that's an expert practitioner. You meet all the above criterias. You also are demonstrating leadership abilities. You're on committees in the hospital. There's just a lot of ways that you can advance on this clinical ladder. So Phil, I definitely would recommend reading that. And this is a way that, because when an employer hires you, they want you to be there forever, right? So if you have a dream job that you want to work for, and most of the students that I talk to, Sacred Heart is on the top of their list. Well, here's what I'll tell you. Sacred Heart's a great hospital. Do not get me wrong. But it depends on what your life looks like. If you have kids and you want to work 6 to 3, Sacred Heart might not be the place for you. Because you're going to be on call. You're going to work some later days. You may pull some 12-hour shifts. So somewhere that's like a private facility, you're not going to make the same amount of money, but it's about looking at what fits your life's needs, But when you're going into a facility and you're saying in that interview and they're asking you, what are your long-term plans? Say, well, I'm coming in here as an entry-level practitioner, but my goal is to stay with Sacred Heart and be that level 3 expert practitioner in the next 5 years. I'm continuing education. I've already mapped out some education that I want to continue. I want to learn as much as I can. You know what I'm saying? Blah, 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 blah. So it's about what your goals are. If you want to be a travel tech, that is definitely a proficient practitioner and get travel tech jobs in a second. So easy to do. What is your life going to look like as a surgical technologist? Well, you're going to be standing for long periods of times. Depends on your cases. You may be like, if you're in a facility like Columbia is an example I would use, you may have 7 shorter cases in a day. So they may be hour-long cases, back to back to back to back to back. Whereas when you're at Sacred Heart Valley Kootenai, they have massive cases. They may be 6-hour cases, 8-hour cases, 13-hour cases, big long cases. One, you're not going to be going to the bathroom, you're not going to be eating, all those things. Now, in really long cases, they do have ways to kind of relieve some of the staff so that you can go to the restroom and things of that nature. But if they're like a 6-hour case or so, you're not going to be able to do that. You're going to have the ability to lift and move heavy objects. And you may think, when am I going to lift heavy objects? If you're in an orthopedic case, you'll get what I'm saying. Some of those instrument trays are heavy. So you just want to make sure that you're able to do that. You're going to be exposed to some communicable diseases. There's going to be a lot of unpleasant sights and smells in the OR, especially if you work GI, definitely, or GU, definitely some unpleasant, hepato as well. And then there's hazardous materials. So you've got body fluids that you're going to be exposed to, which is where a lot of diseases are transmitted. Now, talking about surgical conscience. Now, this is, we've talked about it, and we'll talk about this until the day you leave the program. The willingness to accept responsibility, number one. Commitment to maintaining confidentiality. This is super important. This is a big pet peeve of mine. This is one thing that will get you pulled out of facility without, all I have to do is hear that this happened and you're out. If you break confidentiality of a patient, one, that is a severe HIPAA violation. If you're not familiar with what HIPAA is, that is the Protection Act for the patient's privacy. So tell me this, you're in on a case and then you break for lunch. You're done with that and you go to lunch, you're in the elevator and there's a bunch of people in the elevator. Are you able to talk about what that case was?
No.
No. Are you able to tell your family what that case was like that you had today? You might talk about the case in a very generic form. Like, oh my gosh, I had a case today that was just like incredible. Is the most amazing procedure I've ever seen done. And you might talk a little bit about that, but you're never going to mention the patient's anything about the patient, right? You're talking about in a generic form. Yes, you can talk about that, but not in a way that it is identifiable. Okay. Now, will you talk to each other about cases? Probably, because it kind of helps your education, but are you going to protect the patient at all costs? Yeah. You're not even going to tell the race, the age, nothing. But we have to talk to each other a lot of times as professionals of like, this is what happened and I didn't know what to do. What would you have done? You're not saying, John Brown was in our hospital. Has he been into your hospital? He's this and this and this. No, you're not, because that is a violation. But you can say, you know, I had a lap appy the other day and I had this situation happen and I didn't know what to do. What would you have done? That you can talk about. But I'm talking about confidentiality, where you are protecting the patient's confidentiality at all costs. Okay. So you just want to make sure that you are maintaining that. Non-discriminatory treatment of all patients. What if I don't like to treat men? Can I turn men away? No. What if I don't like to treat pediatrics? Can I turn kids away? Unless I don't accept pediatrics as a physician, in the sense that that's not my specialty and you're well served to go somewhere else. But can I legally like turn someone away? No. Can I turn someone away if they are Caucasian or Asian or African American or Native? No. Well, What's the difference in me turning someone away in that manner or you treating someone different in the OR because of anything? What if they're transgender? You have to treat them the same as you want to be treated. Everyone has to be treated exactly the same. Okay, so just make sure that your personal opinions are always out of the OR. If you can't keep them out of the OR, we need to have a conversation on how to deal with it. Cost control, a lot of the equipment that you're dealing with in the OR is really extremely expensive. And that is why you'll see we're a private school. We do not have a lot of the super advanced equipment that you will be dealing with in the OR. But what I'll tell you is we don't need to have all the equipment that you're going to have in the OR. You need to know how to stay sterile. That is your top priority. You will learn about all the equipment in the OR because there is no school that has all the equipment that the ORs do because it costs an insane amount of money to have all that equipment. So there's no way a school can have all that equipment that you're going to have in the OR. The main thing you're going to learn is how to stay sterile. And that's that commitment to practice sterile technique. But just know the cost control, I bring that up because you have to be conscious of that, of not wasting things, not slipping things in your pockets, making sure that you are managing that cost control in the OR because there is a lot of costs going into every procedure. Teamwork and communication, of course, is you got to be respectful, professional. You got to focus on the patient and the procedure. And especially in pre-op and post-op, because you don't 100% know what the sedation level of the patient is. So what if you're in pre-op and you're complaining about the doctor that's about to come in and do this surgery? What if that patient's not 100% under and they're hearing you before they go into that case or post-op? You have to make sure that you're staying professional and that your focus as far as your verbiage and everything is very respectful and that it's on the patient and the procedure. And you're not talking about your mother-in-law or you're not talking about your personal life in the OR, okay? This is really important to understand that your focus in that OR is about the patient and the procedure. You're there to do that job. Talk about your personal life when you get in the locker room with your buddies and you guys are all in there doing your change out. You got to have clear communication. If you are not clear on what someone is saying to you or that you have said to them, it is your responsibility to ask when you're unsure about something and state your concerns in the form of a question. So like if you see something being done, you can't say, hey, that is not the way to do that. Because that's not going to be received well. You want to ask it in a question, because if I ask you a question in the form of a question, you will receive it so much better. So if I say, do you want me to hand you this instead of that? Can I hand you the bipolar instead of, whatever it is that they have? So you want to make sure that you're stating things in a question and you always tell the truth, no matter what. All right, so communication, there's a whole page on communication. You guys can read through it all. 8:35. So 4 components of communication though. One thing that you do want to get really good at is communication in the OR because there's a lot of commotion. You want clear communication. There's the sender. So this is the person that's going to be relaying the message, and then there's the message, and then there's the receiver, and then there's the feedback. And so thinking of these communication components, I'm thinking about the patient. Because if you misunderstand a patient, it could be dangerous. So you want to make sure that you're understanding a patient's needs clearly. So if you are asking the question and the patient answers you and you're not really sure you understood them, you want to give feedback. An example of that could be, so I'm hearing you say that you're allergic to penicillin. I'm just making something up. Is that correct? No. Okay, you did not say penicillin. Good, I'm glad I verified that. So it's about getting that feedback. And so you can do that with your coworkers. You can start practicing it at home. And I will tell you this, in my relationships, I've been practicing these communication components for years, and it makes a huge difference just in my ability to communicate well. Okay. Some of you may say, yeah, I don't think you communicate well. Well, that could be the case, but it's this water I drink, you know, from Jack Daniel's distillery. It's really water. Okay, effective verbal communication. I don't know about you guys, but there is not much I hate more than somebody not willing to look me in the eye when they're talking to me. I'm like, you notice they're like dodging me. I'm like, I won't talk to them long, I'll tell you that. So eye contact is very important. One, it shows that genuine interest in what I'm saying. If I'm having eye contact with somebody, if it shows if they're receptive as well. And then you also want to be sensitive to people. So an example of this is I'm married into an Italian family. I don't know if you guys know Italians, they're insanely loud. And I am sensitive. I'm loud. You guys probably are like, well, you're loud. I am not loud in comparison to the Capellos in here. So really loud people. And I would just be like shrinking in the corner. So I'm like, they're so loud. They're like, and I'm very kind of sensitive person. And so when you're in a setting, especially in the OR and in the facility in general, you have to be aware of the sensitivity of other people. They may be sensitive to the loudness. They may be sensitive to the abruptness, because I can be a very abrupt communicator, okay? Because I don't fluff, you know. If I need to tell you something, I don't fluff it. I just tell you here's what we need to do. And so when I'm working with patients, I know how to communicate differently. I know how to be received well. I know how to get in that sensitive place where I'm not abrupt. Because with my family and friends and students, and I can be really abrupt, you know, because I'm just kind of a bullet point talker a lot of times, because I don't like all that fluffy stuff, because I'm like, okay, I just need to get to the point. But when I'm talking to a patient, and when you're talking to a patient, you have to put yourself in a place that you would want, the way you would want to be talked to. So you have to talk a little more gentle and softer, and you have to make that eye contact, because they'll have more respect for you if you're making that eye contact. You have to be sensitive to their needs as well. They're going under the knife in just a few moments. They're probably scared. They're nervous. They don't know if they'll wake up. They don't know what will happen on the other side of them waking up. You have to remember all of that and where they are and the role that you play in their care, in their survival, in their family. Because if their family loses them because of something you've done or that your team has done, you want to make sure that the way you spoke to them at the last is respectful. Okay. All right. Teamwork is extremely important. Every team member has to know their roles, and they have to be observant of each other. So starting now, this is something that we work together to create for you guys this term. You're really going to be working as a team this term, in the sense that you're going to be looking for any breaks in sterility. You're going to be looking for how you can help each other. You're going to be looking at all those different ways, because that is how the OR works. You've always got each other's back. You have to have each other's back, because this is a situation that it is highly important that you know somebody is watching you for the right reason all the time, and you're watching them. Then you have effective verbal and nonverbal communication. We talked about that. Did I talk about body language? I did not talk about body language. So body language is really important in communication with both your patient and your team. You all know how to read body language. All of you probably have either a partner or roommate or family member that when they're mad, they don't ever have to say it, do they? Does their body language tell you they're mad? Yes. Do you think your body language is going to tell a surgeon when you don't like them? Yes. Do you want them to know that you don't like them? No, because if they know, guess what? They're going to give you hell that whole case. So you just have to suck it up and swallow your issue and do your job to the best you can, because your body language is going to show. And I'll tell you this, I get feedback from the clinical preceptors that are over the students that I have in the field. And I get comments, and this has happened the whole time, about attitude, about body language. And sometimes I hear their skills are great, but their attitude sucks and we're not offering them a job. So attitude doesn't have to be your words. It can be your body language can say everything about your attitude, okay? So just be aware of that. So if you have issues with that in the past, that is something you definitely want to work on. If you need help working on that, ask myself or any of the lab instructors, and we are glad to help you know kind of how to manage that a little bit. Principles of teamwork, you got to be polite, respectful, willingness to compromise. We all have to be willing to compromise when we're in a team setting. I may feel like my way is the best way because I've done it that way so many times that I know that's the best way to do it. Well, it might not be. It might be the best way that Dolores likes to do it, but it doesn't mean that it's the best way for that surgeon, or it doesn't mean that that's the best way in general. It's the best way for me. I have to be willing to compromise to really be a good part of the team. You got to be able to collaborate with others, discuss the processes and potential conflicts, and acknowledge all of the alternative solutions. Okay, we've already talked about a lot of this. Basic relationship that this surgical tech will affect social, professional, therapeutic. Goals of communication. I think we talked about all that. Yeah, we talked about that. And that effective listening skills. That's really important. That's something just start practicing. There's a lot of great information in the book about that. I'll leave that for your reading. And yeah, we talked about all. Okay, here's some of the surgical services that you could possibly be working in. Of course, the traditional ORs, freestanding ambulatory surgical centers, freestanding specialty centers, doctors' offices, doctors' clinic, and then labor and delivery units. So we talked about a lot of those, but that's kind of the complete list. And then there's 3 types of hospitals. There's proprietary, there's a nonprofit, and then there's for-profit. So we have all kinds in this area, to be honest with you. So, you know, it just depends on what you're looking to do, because, and I'll tell you, like proprietary and for-profit, they usually pay more. Nonprofit usually pays a little bit less, but they usually have a lot more conscientious benefits. And so it kind of just helps you decide, like, what am I wanting to do with my profession? Am I wanting to do a lot of service work, or am I in this in the beginning or part of the way for the money? It just helps you like kind of decide what kind of facility you want to work for based on what you're in it for. Okay, you may do volunteer work outside of work, but you're there for work, just for the money. That's fine. And then the characteristics of hospital organizations, there's a lot of different types. They'll have different philosophies and policies. different layers of administration. And of course, then there's a second division of that for medical affairs. So there's medical and nursing facilities, and then the surgical departments, they may be divided up into units, and it may be based on some of those specialties, because you'll see that a lot of times where those specialties will be divided up into units, and where general surgery has its own unit as well. So in the book, you actually have a organization chart of the hospital, starting from the board of trustees and all the way down to nursing services, surgical services, and you can look over that and just kind of get an idea of like, how does the medical facility work? Because you want to see where you are in that organizational chart. Now, the interactions between the perioperative, so remember, perioperative is all of those: pre-op, post-op, pre-op, intra-op, and post-op. So the interactions between those services and the other hospital departments. And this is really important because you're not there doing your job without any interaction with the other departments, because you work with multiple departments for the procedure to take case. One, you've got sterile processing that's getting all your equipment ready for you. You have nursing services who's getting the patient ready and bringing them down. Then you have the transportation department, who they're actually bringing the patient down to you. Then you have diagnostic imaging. You'll have those in the OR with you many times. You'll be trained on a C-arm, which is one of the big C-shaped X-ray machines that is able to fit around an operating table. There may be techs in the room with you. There may be perfusionists in the room with you. There's a lot of staff that could be added to the room. Laboratory, so you may have laboratory staff, because what if blood is needed during the procedure? You know, we have blood banks in the hospital settings that are able to provide the blood that's needed during the procedures. Pathology, like we talked about earlier, that department is needed to make sure that the tissues that are obtained are tested on the spot. Pharmacy, we're responsible for providing all of the medications that are needed during the procedure, as well as before and after. The physical occupational therapy, as well as home health and hospice. Maintenance, think about maintenance and biomed. So both of those teams are responsible for making sure that all of our equipment is working in the OR. What if the light bulb goes out? Well, that's highly important that we have adequate lighting during our procedure. Environmental services, so they're cleaning everything up in between cases. Purchasing and central services, they're making sure that all the equipment that's needed for these cases is provided. Medical records, they're responsible for making sure that all of the records that we have on this patient are available to us and updated. Risk management, so this is making sure that the patient and the employee are both safe. Infectious control and administration. Then, you know, there's lots to think about, all the different departments, and they all work together, so they're not separate. The entire team of the hospital works together to make it happen. Then, of course, there's financial considerations and reimbursements, because you know, things may be provided free of charge. Especially if it is at a nonprofit, that can be the case. Insurance is a big entity that we deal with, that, you know, there's an agreement between the facility and the insurance provider that the payment is already kind of agreed upon. Then there's healthcare reimbursement, and then there's the Patient Protection Affordable Care Act. And so that is the act that ensures that all United States citizens are provided with affordable insurance. And then there's government financial assistance. So There's Medicare, Medicaid that is offered to patients. And yep, that's their additional coverage through Medicare, Medicaid. Most healthcare coverage is provided through either HMOs or PPOs. So different types of providers. And then here we've got DRGs. And so this is a kind of an important term that you'll hear, and it's a diagnosis related groups. And that I'm not going to go there because it's kind of a soapbox for me, but reimbursements are influenced by those. So just know that it's something that it really kind of influences how much that reimbursement rate is going to be. And it's kind of like diagnoses are lumped into related groups. And there is an assigned reimbursement rate that is determined for a specific procedure. So, and that really does come back up to the OR team controlling the cost, because the reimbursement rate has already been decided. And then the professional organizations, we've already talked a lot about this, but one that we didn't talk about is Joint Commission. So Joint Commission isn't actually like, it's an organization that it does develop standards and it accredits healthcare organization. So they come in and they want to make sure that the hospitals are operating and maintaining these standards, and they will accredit the hospital saying that they have met all these standards that has been set in place. Okay, in this chapter, we've reviewed several topics: the historical development of the surgery, the principles of communication, the roles of the surgical team members, the types of healthcare facilities, hospital organization, and professional organizations. I think that was it. You guys have any questions on any of that material? Nope. Let me look. I think I lost somebody. Okay. All right, we are going to watch one video and then we'll be done. So this video is provided by the AST, the Association of Surgical Technologists, and it, make sure I got the right one. Hang on, let me make sure I got the right one. No, I did not. I was like, that doesn't look right. I have an old computer. I can still run a CD in my computer. I need a new computer, but I'm reluctant to get one because I need to do these little DVDs for you guys because I know you love them so much. Okay, so this video is Thompson Delmar's Learnings, Surgical Technology Skills and Procedures. Let me get it started and then I will share my screen. Okay, here we go. Don't go to sleep on me. We're almost done. You guys are doing great. All right, we're gonna do the intro. See yourself in this role.
Surgical technology is one of the fastest growing allied health professions in the United States. The Joint Commission on Accreditation of Healthcare Organizations, JCAHO, defines the role of the surgical technologist as An allied health professional who works closely with surgeons, anesthesiologists, registered nurses, and other surgical personnel, delivering patient care and assuming appropriate responsibilities before, during, and after surgery. Entry into the profession anticipates graduation from an accredited program in surgical technology and successful completion of the certification examination. Surgical technologists typically require 1 or 2 years of training at or above the college level. The Commission on Accreditation of Allied Health Education Programs, CAA-HEP, is responsible for the accreditation of programs for educating and training surgical technologists. The Accreditation Review Committee for Education in Surgical Technology, ARCST, is directly responsible for overseeing the academic accreditation of the surgical technology field. The Liaison Council on Certification for Surgical Technology, LCCST, is for oversight of the credential Certified Surgical Technologist and Certified Surgical Technologist Certified First Assistant. The LCCST is also directly responsible for oversight of the National Certification Examination for both credentials. The Association of Surgical Technologists, AST, has spearheaded efforts to bring surgical technologists, other healthcare professionals, and organizations together. AST promotes quality patient care through the development of educational programs and guidelines that promote professional standards and credentialing. This organization provides a personal and professional forum for the surgical technology profession. If you are not a graduate of an accredited program, you are not eligible to sit for the National Certification Examination. The AST also developed a list of roles and levels to serve as guidelines for the surgical technologist in career planning and for employers looking for an appropriate criteria to develop a clinical ladder. Students should focus on the broadly stated competencies to develop a plan for career development. There are 3 critical principles that serve as the foundation for all role descriptions and competencies for surgical technologists. All surgical technologists should hold the certification that is appropriate to each role. All surgical technologists should meet the educational, competency, and legal requirements expected of all healthcare professionals. State law and hospital policy should be followed without exception. The surgical environment is fast-paced, and the surgical technologist must be able to respond quickly and accurately, paying great attention to the details of their job. Maintaining personal focus is very important because the hazards of the profession are significant ones that include possible exposure to communicable diseases, hazardous materials, unpleasant odors, and disagreeable sights. Most surgical procedures are carried out during the day, and a 40-hour week is considered routine. However, the surgical technologist should be prepared to work during holidays, weekends, nights, or to perform on-call duties. Surgical technologists are expected to prioritize tasks while under pressure in emergency situations. Therefore, a stable temperament, the ability to function under duress, and a strong sense of responsibility are qualities essential to the surgical technologist. Patience within the operating room is also required, since procedures can be prolonged. Manual dexterity and physical stamina are also vital. The job requires the ability to stand for extended periods of time and to lift and move heavy objects. Sensitivity to the needs of the patient, as well as other members of the surgical team, separate competent STs from those who truly stand out. And finally, Individuals who practice this profession usually have a strong desire to help others and to make a valuable contribution to society. A surgical technologist works as a member of the surgical team to ensure that the operative procedure is conducted under optimal conditions. Surgical team members are responsible for the 3 phases of surgical patient care. Preoperative case management, which occurs prior to initiation of the surgery. Intraoperative case management, which includes responsibilities during the time the actual surgery is being performed, and postoperative case management, the time after the procedure is completed.
Hemorrhaging is probably the biggest complication because as you're, moving through parts of the body, it can be very difficult to see. Everyone's anatomy is, just slightly different. Everyone's major anatomy is the same, but there are tiny blood vessels here and there that everyone has their own circulation. And so if one of those is nicked and it's in an area that's very difficult to see, the entire surgical area can fill up with blood very quickly. And, you have to react very fast, getting lap sponges, getting suction, irrigation even.
You have to be able to think on your feet. You can't panic. You need to work with the surgeon, and sometimes you take control because you're directing people, get this for me, I need this, this, and this. You need to keep a calm head. Something else is gained with experience.
In philosophy, ethics defines what is good for the individual and for society, and establishes the nature of duties that people owe themselves and one another. Professional ethics is the system of moral principles and rules that become the standard for professional conduct. The Association of Surgical Technologists has established the following code of ethics as a guideline for the surgical technologist. To maintain the highest standards of professional conduct and patient care. To hold in confidence, with respect to the patient's beliefs, all personal matters. To respect and protect the patient's legal and moral rights to quality patient care. To not knowingly cause injury or any injustice to those entrusted to our care. To work with fellow technologists and other professional health groups to promote harmony and unity for better patient care. To always follow the principles of asepsis. To maintain a high degree of efficiency through continuing education. To maintain and practice surgical technology willingly, with pride and dignity. To report any unethical conduct or practice to the proper authority. And to adhere to the code of ethics at all times with all members of the healthcare team. A surgical technologist must also have a surgical conscience. This refers to the personal moral authority to accept responsibility for his or her own actions, to be willing to be held accountable for those actions, and to give the information needed in order to evaluate those actions. Keeping a patient's confidence, avoiding discrimination, and a commitment to cost control are all examples of surgical conscience. Also rooted in this notion is a fundamental understanding of the principles of asepsis and a firm commitment to practice sterile technique.
Surgical conscience is being aware of what is sterile and what is not sterile around the patient in the operating room.
It is the ability to admit you're wrong, that you made a mistake, and that you can fix it.
I have to be aware of everything within my field and everything within the room because it's my conscience to pick up something that's wrong, whether it's with me or whether it's with my nurse or whether it's with my surgeon or even anesthesiology. I have to have this conscious awareness of everything that's going on because if something's wrong, that compromises my patient care.
Surgical technologists function in 2 capacities, non-sterile and sterile. The surgical technologist, CST, in the non-sterile role is called a circulator. The circulator can also be a registered nurse, RN, licensed practical, or vocational nurse, LPN, LVN. Some of the duties of the surgical technologist in the circulating role include positioning the patient and prepping the surgical site. Positioning patients is an important preoperative responsibility of the surgical technologist. The purpose of proper positioning is to provide the best possible access and visualization of the surgical site while causing the least possible compromise in physiological function and stress to joints, skin, and other body parts. Positioning should also provide access to the patient for the administration of IV fluids and anesthetic agents and provide for patient safety. Safe positioning of the surgical patient is imperative for successful surgery and is the responsibility of the entire surgical team. Positioning the patient requires knowledge of the procedure to be performed and any special needs the patient may require. The surgical technologist also plays an important role in keeping the patient safe when performing surgical skin preparation. This duty is carried out to remove transient organisms from the patient's skin and to reduce the number of resident organisms on the patient's skin. If the prep is not performed properly, the opportunity for infection can be greatly increased. Living human tissue cannot be sterilized. Therefore, the goal of the surgical skin prep is the same as asepsis: to keep the microbial count within the sterile field to an irreducible minimum. Traditionally, the surgical technologist functions in the sterile capacity during the surgical procedure. This facet of the surgical technologist's duties is very demanding and requires strict attention to detail to ensure that all supplies and equipment are readily available and functioning properly. It is the surgical technologist's responsibility to protect the integrity of the sterile field at all times.
When you're doing a good job is when the surgeon's not having to ask for too many things, or not even having to ask that you do know the procedure and he's just lifting his hand up and you're just placing in his hand what he needs. And there's very little exchange going on. Things are kept quiet. Move much more quickly that way. And you're able to keep the concentration levels are much greater. You'll be able to keep focused on what is taking place, particularly the surgeon.
Anticipation, I think, is something that makes a good tech, makes someone who just knows the instruments and hands things when they're asked for, versus someone who is watching the surgery, knows what's going on, and could put the instrument in the surgeon's hand before he even looks up. Stop looking at your back table. Watch the surgeon, watch his hands, look for bleeding.
Before surgery, the role of the sterile surgical technologist involves many responsibilities. Some of these are as follows: donning OR attire and personal protective equipment, or PPE, and performing the surgical scrub. For the safety of the patient, all members of the surgical team must adhere to the principles of asepsis and the practice of sterile technique. Once the sterile field has been established, any individual who will enter the sterile field, touch sterile instruments, or an incisional wound must perform a surgical scrub and don sterile attire prior to entry into the sterile field. The surgical scrub is intended to remove as many microorganisms as possible from the hands and arms and render them surgically clean prior to donning the sterile gown and gloves. Another preoperative responsibility is preparing the OR for the upcoming procedure. An important part of that process consists of gathering, opening, and arranging instrumentation and supplies. As is true of many of the surgical technologist's duties, it is the responsibility of every surgical technologist to create and protect the integrity of their sterile field while setting up the back table, Mayo stand, and ring basin. Consequently, the the rules of asepsis must be applied for sterile technique to be implemented. The back table provides a large sterile area for preparation and storage of sterile items. Instruments less likely to be used, redundant instruments, or instruments of specific and often one-time use are left on the back table. The back table is typically the first sterile area prepared by the surgical technologist. As additional items are opened, the sterile field is expanded. Typically, the larger items such as the basin set and the instrument set are opened next, and then smaller remaining wrapped and peel-packed items are placed onto the existing sterile field. To reduce the risk of contamination of the sterile field, it is recommended that the surgical technologist's gown and gloves be opened on a separate surface, such as an extra mayo stand, rather than the back table. A mayo stand is the stand that is moved closest to the operative field. The surgical technologist works from the stand to supply instrumentation needed immediately by the surgeon. Prior to the procedure, a separate small table or mayo stand is used to set up gowns and gloves for the sterile members of the operative team entering the sterile field. Yet another preoperative requirement is to assist in draping the patient. Drapes are applied to expose the surgical site, create a sterile barrier, and to maintain a sterile field. After the prep, draping is always performed by sterile team members. The technologist may drape with the surgeon or the surgical assistant. All parties involved are expected to know proper draping procedures, details about the drapes, folding patterns, and potential difficulties associated with specific drape types. Because some drapes are large and the possibility of contamination is increased during draping, the circulator should participate as a careful observer during draping. Postoperatively, the surgical technologist is required to maintain the sterile field until the patient is transported from the OR, and only then to disassemble the sterile field, removing used instruments, equipment, and supplies from the OR. Surgical technologists are responsible for maintaining the integrity of surgical instruments and equipment by making sure that all instrumentation is properly decontaminated and sterilized at the Central Sterile Processing Unit. Central Sterile Processing functions under the principles of asepsis through proper cleaning, disinfection, and sterilization. It is the responsibility of Central Sterile Processing to follow every guideline of instrument and supply processing to the letter. These practices begin upon the completion of a surgical procedure. Instruments are cleaned of any gross contamination by the surgical technologist and covered for safe transport to the decontamination area where they are further cleaned and disinfected manually or by the use of washer decontaminators. After decontamination and disinfection, these instruments are taken to the clean processing area where they are inspected, sorted, reassembled, and wrapped for sterilization.
The thing I would say to the new person or the new surgical technologist coming in is stick with it. It's important to realize that everyone makes mistakes, but it takes practice. It takes practice to be fluent. It takes practice to make sure everything is there what you need. And you have to realize that surgeons are going to be looking at you and people are going to be saying, hurry up, hurry up. But the important thing is to make sure that you do it correctly and that you do it safely and that you do it sterilely.
Students need to realize that it's going to be at least a year to 2 years before you're comfortable in the operating room. That's after graduation. No one expects you to be perfect. We all learned, we all started from ground zero. We're going to be very patient with you. It is a lot, we realize that, but there's support teams in the operating room to work with you, and you'll get through.
Many healthcare professionals believe that their profession represents a true vocation, that is, a calling. Surgical technologists tend to feel this very strongly. It is a profession that transforms the practitioner. The process is physical, intellectual, social, psychological, and spiritual. Professionalism begins with competency and commitment in the workplace. Employers, surgical staff, and patients deserve a dependable professional team member. As you choose to enter into education and training as a surgical technologist, your life will change in many ways. Here are some changes for your consideration. You will know more about the human body than almost 95% of those living today. You will be faced with psychological events and outcomes that most others seldom face. You will be expected to perform well whenever called on. Surgical technologists are held accountable for their actions. This means that each individual's actions are counted or evaluated against a standard of practice. Accountability for the surgical technologist extends beyond the OR and interacts with one's personal life. Most surgical technologists are employed in hospital surgery departments, obstetric departments, and ambulatory care centers to perform in the scrub role. The roles of circulator and surgical assistant are also career opportunities for the surgical technologist. In addition, the following employment options are also available to the experienced surgical technologist, some of which will require further education. Specialization in an area of interest, such as cardiac, orthopedic, or pediatric. Private employment by a surgeon. Employment as a traveling surgical technologist to fill temporary staffing needs for healthcare facilities nationally and internationally. Employment by a veterinary surgeon or animal care facility. Employment by a medical corporation to represent its products. Research and product development. Employment in the material management or sterile processing area. Assumption of supervisory responsibilities. Surgical technology instructor or program director. Military service. Volunteer opportunities. Technical writing, illustration, and photography, and employment as a consultant. Of all the tasks and roles that a surgical technologist may play during his or her career, the most important is as a guarantor of sterile technique in the OR. A surgical technologist committed to professional honesty, patient confidentiality, non-discriminatory treatment, cost consciousness, and sterile technique will provide the greatest level of safety to the patient that can be expected.
And the responsibility of being that patient's advocate during the surgery is it's a great responsibility, but it's very rewarding when you can bring a patient in who's very nervous and scared, calm them down, and see a good result. We were able to remove a tumor. We were able to remove a blockage. We were able to help them make their life a little better afterwards. That's probably my biggest reward as far as working in the OR.
I love the socialization of my job, working with different people every day, developing those relationships, trust. You gain experience and you learn every single day. And after 26 years, I'm still learning. Every day, something new, some new equipment, some new products. And it's the newness that keeps it interesting. It challenges you. And I love what I do. I get a great feeling of satisfaction every day when I leave work, knowing that I did a good job, that I helped people and made a difference.
Okay. Did that kind of solidify some of the information that we had gone over a little bit? Yeah, okay. All right, any questions on any of the material or any of the syllabus or anything that we talked about tonight? Nope, okay. If you have any issues that come up or questions, feel free to shoot me an email or text message. If I'm working or with patients and I get a text message, and you won't hear back from me right away. So just know that I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Okay. All right. And I am coming into the school tomorrow night, so I will see you guys there. And you guys will be hanging out with Alex tomorrow night. So you guys are going to have fun. All right, you guys go get some rest, and I will see you guys tomorrow night. Thank you all for your attention. I appreciate it.
Good night. Thank you.
You're welcome.